It's just really busy. I guess kind of weird at sometimes. It's all problem solving every day, all day long.
Oy.
Which is kind of cool, but.
Well, probably cool for you, because you probably like that.
Yeah.
I do not. I like things just to be there.
Yeah.
I donated blood today. It was so fun. Frustrating. My computer at home is like, what does it say, server not found, and several other things on it, and I was really annoyed.
public notice of this meeting is posted at the school district office and website, all school buildings, Lodi Enterprise, Portage Daily Register, Lodi City Hall, Lodi Town Hall, Dane Village Hall, Dane Township Hall, West Point Town Hall, Vienna Town Hall, Lodi Public Library, mailed to the clerks of Arlington, Decorah, Roxbury Townships.
I make a motion to approve.
We gotta do a roll call first.
Oh, sorry.
So let's see who all is in attendance. Mr. Whipperford,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Steinberg, yes. Ms. Lathrop,
Yes.
Ms. Lathrop,
Whatever.
Julie
Yes.
McKernan, Shelley Pear,
Yes.
and Barb Meyer is online.
Hi, Barb.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Hello.
All 7 of us are here. Now, Shelley, you can make an approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve, what was I approving?
The agenda.
The agenda, sorry.
I will second.
Motion by Shelley, second by Angie. Roll call, again, sorry. Fields, yes.
Yes.
Stevens, yes. Adams, yes. Angie,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes. Yes.
Shelley, Barb,
Yes.
thank you. Yes, 7-0. We move on to public input. Purpose of citizen input agenda item is for the public to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. The amount of time allotted to each speaker will generally not exceed 5 minutes per person to allow all people who wish to speak an opportunity to be heard. However, the president may modify the time limits at his or her discretion. If the speaker has questions for the board, they will be duly noted and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner. But the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of the public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during the public input session or on any item that was not posted on the meeting agenda. Citizen input is an important part of the board meeting agenda, and the board appreciates hearing from the community on issues concerning them in our school district. First up, Mr. Andrus, can you state your whole name for us?
Cody Enders, wrestling coach here in the district and also a special education teacher at the elementary school. Good evening. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the wrestling team, but also on behalf of all winter sports and co-curricular activities. As we make this decision, we need to make it together, as I mentioned in my last speech. As coaches, we've met with admins to discuss this upcoming decision, and we've also met individually as sports. And while we have full support for one another, we also know each of our plans may look different from one another, and that is okay. We also feel, in looking over each of our plans and one another's plans, they are very solid, and if given the chance, we will be successful. In watching the last board meeting, I heard loud and clear from the board that they didn't want an emotional speech, but rather a plan and facts. I submitted my plan to the admins last Tuesday, and I know each school board member was able to look it over prior to tonight. I apologize for the length, but I wanted to get everything in there that I could. I and many others who have looked over the plan with strong conviction feel that if you look at the plan with an open mind, you can understand it can be successful. In previous times, I'd like to thank the district for the decisions they've made thus far. While not popular, I think they have been spot on. As a teacher, I was one of the ones who was 100% all in on coming back in person. At the time of the vote to go virtual, I struggled to understand the why behind the decision. I knew we needed to get kids back into the building, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why the board didn't do it. After being in the school for a few months now, I understand why it wasn't possible due to staffing issues. There just isn't enough manpower to go around, and the quarantines eliminate the possibilities of having successful in-person instruction. However, I know that that won't be the case with winter sports. I also applaud the board for the decisions they made this fall in letting some sports continue and delaying the others for spring. At that time, although not popular, these decisions seem to look better and better. Thankfully, with the delay of fall sports, they will have a chance in the spring. Winter sports, on the other hand, it's now or never. When the fall sports decision was made and admin stated, "We are happy student athletes still have opportunities. We are not taking anything away at this time. We are just moving things around." All of that is true, and hopefully fall sports have the opportunity to compete this upcoming spring. Thankfully, at the last board meeting, another admin acknowledged that we can't move winter sports around. A decision needs to be made. I know it's a tough decision, but if our objective is to make the safest decision for our kids, the choice is clear with the plans that we have in place. Since the start of the school year, we as school employees, whether you're teacher, coaches, etc., have been trained time and time again on how to successfully implement COVID mitigation strategies. To date, these strategies have been successful. We have learned that schools aren't super spreaders like many thought, and with similar and more intensive plans in place, winter sports won't be super spreaders either. We have the staffing capabilities to be able to manage a winter sports season and navigate potential shutdowns and quarantines much better than the schools do. For example, it's much easier to shut down a portion of a wrestling team, say 2 to 4 guys, than it is to shut down several classrooms or a potential grade. If we don't allow students to participate in winter sports or co-curriculars here in Lodi, the majority of them will continue to participate anyway, just through local sports clubs. I've had many parents already talk to me saying, we're holding off on the club route for now, but if we don't have a season, the club route is what we are doing. While I do value club sports in a lot of capacities, the safer route is to keep our athletes here in town with us coaches who care about them, coaches who follow health and safety procedures, coaches who will do the right thing for the individual athlete, their team, and our community, once again, together. Club sports are truly the Wild West. You don't know what you're getting. And I promise you it is safer to allow us to have our kids under our wing than it is to pursue club sports during the COVID world. At the last board meeting, a school board member mentioned how they fear for the long-term effects of education due to COVID. As a teacher, I have those same fears. As a coach, I have heightened fears in regards to the high school athletics versus club debate. I know if kids are forced to go the club route this year, it opens up the floodgates, and we as high school coaches will struggle to regain control. This is truly a landmark decision. Going even further, the worst kept secret in Lodi is that social distancing is happening amongst kids. Being able to talk to students, parents, and other community members, it is clear that although we have guidelines in place, they're not being followed. In conversations with students and parents, they are very clear in saying, what is the purpose of following these guidelines? Everything has been taken away from us. We need to give our students a reason to socially distance. And if they have a season on the line, they will follow the protocols laid out. We need to give our kids hope and some normalcy in their lives at this current time. Not long ago, an admin was quoted as saying, athletics are an important part of the community, so we want to do what's best for our community and kids. After talking with athletes, coaches, and parents, it is clear that it is best to keep them here in Lodi, not traveling as we start to promote social distancing. And please, give us a choice and give us a chance. In the name of safety, keeping wrestling and other sports here in Lodi is the safest thing to do. Wrestling is being done all over. USA Wrestling, which is governed by the United States Olympic Committee and is government funded, is having sponsored events all the time. These events have given us a great opportunity to analyze what wrestling's return will look like. Due to the screening procedures, very few have been found to have competed with COVID-19. With how strong wrestlers' immune systems are, the spread has been almost minimal. And with the easy ability to contact trace, in wrestling only 2 people wrestle at a time, it allows us to identify and quarantine the wrestlers at potential risk. Very few cases of COVID have occurred or spread. These procedures work. The blueprint and model is there for us to follow. Currently, given what we know, this is the best plan that I have submitted to you guys. But I also know that the plans will be fluid and adjustable in the name of safety. Throughout the year, we as wrestlers, coaches, parents, admins, board members, community members will work together. Each week, better ideas and regulations continue to arise. The plan that was sent to you is not the best version of the plan we will have, but I know in its place it could still be successful. We have a waiver. Parents and athletes know the risk. More importantly, they know the benefits. Many of you on this board have seen the life-changing impact the sport of wrestling and many others can have on a child. We just can't take it away from him. Our district has done such a great job launching the social and emotional learning program. We know how important social and emotional learning is. We need to give these students successful outlets. After speaking tonight, I will hop onto the Google Meet and will be available to speak and clarify any questions if need be. I thank you immensely for all your time, effort, and dedication to the School District of Lodi. I know that together we can all make this work to have a safe and successful season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen? Not you, Stephen. The other Stephen. Mr. Collier.
You won't call my name.
7, and then we got a big one.
Oh, perfect. Dead traitor.
formal North Skate game attire. It's a requirement. Co-op.
I'm doing everything I can to work with you.
You're gonna go with your Clarence.
Okay. So we're switching up the order.
Yep.
Could you stand on the X, Clarence?
I'm sorry.
On the
Right
X?
here.
No, that
This
one.
one right
Right here?
Any X, just pick an X.
Pick an X. And then you state your full name, please.
Hi, I'm Clarence Miller. I think most of you know me, but I'm not sure how many of you are aware.
We have a bunch of people online listening too. So.
Okay, how much of you are aware that I've been a wrestling official for 40-some years? Wrestling has had a long history of having protocols in place dealing with infectious diseases. The sport of wrestling requires pre-meet inspections for any infectious diseases. And while COVID-19 is not a visible infection, many of the same time-tested protocols that wrestling has had for decades would either apply or be easily modified for the COVID-19 situation. Also, wrestling by its nature is a sport well-defined and easily adapted for contact tracing, mainly due to its one-on-one nature of the sport. Not all, but many wrestlers will compete this winter, even if there isn't a school-sponsored season. Would it not be better to have their participation under school control and guidelines instead of completely on their own? My opinion is that it would be more risk for community spread under that scenario than a program under Lodi and WIA administration. Thank you, and before I leave, is there any questions? I know you normally don't take them, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Clarence.
We have Michelle Poles and Mitch Hauser are next, I think.
Online, yeah.
They're online.
Michelle Paul, or, there she is.
Coach Poles and Coach
Yep.
Hauser?
Ready. All right.
Michelle has the quote.
Yes. Hi, my name is Michelle Pauls. I am a guided health teacher at the Lodi High School and also the girls varsity basketball coach. So, first and foremost, I'd like to thank the school board members and administration for doing all you do. You have been going above and beyond in 2020, and you truly have the toughest jobs. With that being said, I support any decision you make tonight, and I realize we all have the same goal. We want these kids back in school, staying in school, and involved in extracurriculars in a safe manner. I also realize all of you are parents on the sport. Some of you even have student athletes like myself in the district and see firsthand what these kids are going through. Therefore, I do not need to explain the emotional impact it has on everyone involved. And I'm going to try my hardest to stick to the facts and not bring emotions into this. This is much easier said than done for myself. I just thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Lodi girls basketball program and all winter sports. Grit and perseverance. Why do I share these two words with you tonight? Well, when I was thinking about how we can make this season as safe as possible, these two words stood out to me. Grit. We need to have the courage to allow this season. Now, I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous or even scared to start the season. But Coach Hauser and myself have also gone above and beyond to make sure that our student athletes will be safe. I have proved it this summer that I can run a safe open gym where guidelines are followed. We've also shared with the administration and school board our plan, which consists of the following. We would cohort our varsity, JV, and JV2. Therefore, they would never cross paths during practice, which would allow us to keep them the same 10 to 12 players together. Yes, this defeats the family atmosphere that we work so hard to create, but we will find virtual and creative ways to keep that connection with one another. We would shorten practice times to allow for a 15-minute transition time. This would not only allow coaches to disinfect equipment before the next team arrives, but also allow the previous team time to leave the gym without crossing paths, hence keeping the cohort together. We would constantly disinfect and sanitize before, during, and after practice. Each girl would also have a home base. And this home base kind of mentality came from the open field for soccer and football, in which they have a place to go to, which is 6 feet away from each other, where they can put their belongings and water bottles. This is also a place they could go to 6 feet away from someone if they needed to remove their masks during practice. Lastly, all coaches and players will be wearing masks during practice, except if they are in their home base. Perseverance. This isn't going to be easy, but we are determined we can make this season happen. We have the opportunity to offer our student athletes a controlled, safe environment. To be honest, if we do not have a season, many of these girls would choose to play club or AAU, and to be honest, we should be able to play the game that they love. However, wouldn't we as a district want to have control over this? Therefore, if we are all in this together, administration, custodial and cleaning crew, coaches, parents, and players, we will be able to set the protocol for not only practices, but also for our home, away games, and transportation. Lastly, I would like to advocate to start this season November 16th and allow for our contact days to be just that, contact days. Getting our players ready to compete in the upcoming season with live drills and allowing them to compete against one another. All in all, this is not an easy decision, as I stated earlier, but I have seen this community come together on several occasions, and I believe we can do this. Please just give us the opportunity. Thank you for all you do for the Lodi School District and for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Lodi Girls Basketball Program.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I've met with Cody and Michelle, and we've all had a proposal. You've seen our basketball proposal and the things that we intend to do. And so I feel like you have enough information to make your decision. I'd just like to echo the comments that Michelle made, namely that we recognize the difficult decision that you guys have to make, and and that we continue to support whatever that you decide. Please know that if your decision is that you allow us to have winter sports season, that Michelle and I will continue to work diligently to work together to provide the absolute safest environment we can to try to stop the spread of the virus. So I'm going to yield the floor in the interest of time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mitch.
Chad Milne, I think.
Chad Milne is
Okay. Stephen didn't show up yet.
No, not yet. I'm wondering if you got the time right.
Could you please state your full name for us?
Yes, my name is Chad Milne. First off, Mr. Brining, the school board, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you present today. I am here on behalf of the parents, so we have a consolidated voice. Just a little bit about myself. I am a parent. I have a daughter who plays basketball, and I'm also assistant coach under Coach Pulls, former teacher, and recently I just retired from the military, where I was the chief of safety at the Wisconsin Air National Guard unit in Madison, and my primary job there was dealing with safety programs for both ground and air programs, and I had a lot of extensive training in risk analysis. So I want to begin first off by thanking you for this opportunity, acknowledge the decision that you have at hand, and I applaud you for considering public input. I'd also like to thank Coach Pulls and Coach Hauser for their recent efforts and initiative to putting this plan together. I've had the opportunity to collaborate them with a little bit on the plan, and I can attest that those two approach this plan in the same manner that they've approached every season, with a commitment to make this the best possible safe environment for these kids. I've had the opportunity to coach with Michelle for 9 years, Mitch for 1 year, and I've known him all my life. So I have a lot of respect for both of them. I think it is clear that their desire to have this season came out in how they were motivated to put this plan together. And I also feel that they're going to carry this plan out with that same conviction. As a parent, like I said, I'm here representing the 27 families of the girls program, but I've also had multiple boys program or parents reach out, and they share the same message that I'm to present to you this evening. I know earlier today I sent you an email with a couple links to it, and there was a survey that I had sent out. Just to sum up the survey, I asked 3 questions just to gauge how everybody's feeling, all the parents. The first question is, do you support us starting a season November 16th with competition? The second question was, do you support the risk mitigation factors proposed by the coaches and the WI return to play rules? or guidelines? And then lastly, do you support the content of this presentation? And I shared that with them earlier this week. And you probably saw by the results, it was overwhelmingly positive response from the parents. I will say this, that none of us parents are denying or disputing the seriousness of COVID. But we also know that statistically, this age group is at a lower risk, all right? In contrast, however, we have witnessed a larger risk in watching our students, athletes' mental health decline. According to the student survey that was offered by the district, only 45% of our school students currently are satisfied or highly satisfied with their current educational experience. Now, these numbers were included in the information packet that you got, but they weren't presented or briefed to you at the last board meeting. You know, we feel as parents that we cannot ignore these feelings of our young adults. You know, with 7+ hours in front of the screen during the school day and more hours spent compiled at night completing homework, they need some sort of outlet. These kids have held hope for the last 7 months that they could still have a winter season. They've watched area schools, including conference schools, WA tournament runs this fall, where they've witnessed other schools doing this, but they've had to sit theirs out. With colder weather and shorter days keeping their spirits up, this is going to be more difficult, all right? If we continue to take activities with proven benefits away from our kids, we will see a further decline in their mental health. This likely leads to participation in undesirable activities with more detriment to their well-being. Board members, you've commented in previous meetings that emotion has to be taken out of our decisions. Well, us as parents would argue ignoring those emotions means we are ignoring the mental health and are taking a one-sided risk assessment. By having sports, we can provide an outlet with a controlled environment to allow our kids to have something positive in their lives to look forward to after having so much taken away. With our mitigation procedures that have been proposed, we believe we can provide a safe environment while minimizing the threat of contracting COVID. It is difficult for any of us to comprehend the responsibility that you all hold, especially without us not actually having served on the board. Your number one task is to provide a safe environment for our students and student athletes, an incredible task that we all will acknowledge. But the question we ask you as parents, is there an equal or even greater risk by not providing a sports season to these young adults? In any effective risk analysis model, we also have to look at the effects and the levels of risk you are accepting caused by those decisions. And a no vote, that is something that we need to think about and we need to assess. I think this upcoming season is a perfect example of this. We are blessed with our both boys and girls program to have very talented teams. The senior and junior class, they've been together a very long time and they spend a lot of time outside the regular season training and making their game better. Many of them, or a handful of them, have aspirations of even going out of the next level and playing in college. Several are if we don't offer these athletes a season, they will play clubs, they will form clubs, or go play for an AAU team. Currently, I can accurately speak to the girls program. We have all 13 of our upperclassmen, 100%, are playing club ball right now in the month of October. For the rest of the girls in the boys program, I would estimate that's probably about 50% of the athletes are playing some form of club. This number will grow without a season. With a season, this number shrinks to 0. These club events host multiple teams from various parts of the state and other states, which means more exposure to large numbers of players and spectators from outside the community. Although our athletes have participated in these events without incident, we can make it much safer by limiting spectators and playing only one team per event in a large space that our gym can provide. The school district, we have the resources and the facilities to provide that safe environment. Additionally, like the coaches have proposed, by keeping the teams to 10 to 12 players, as Our athletes will act as cohorts. Our teams will act as cohorts, completely independent from other teams within each program. Recently, the school district praised a similar cohort of students on social media as they worked together at a house around the kitchen table in the community and then went outside for class. This really isn't that much different than what the coaches have proposed. Currently, our high school students are 100% virtual. With our current metrics in place, it is very possible that this will continue throughout the entire winter season. If there would be an exposure, these 100% voluntary cohorts would be able to isolate at home without disruption of other cohort teams, without disruption of the current academic structure that's in place. Guidelines have already been adopted by the school district, by all of you, if an exposure would occur in an extracurricular setting. Mr. Brining and the board members, you have all stated multiple times that they must make decisions that are best for the safety of our students and our community during the COVID crisis. I would argue we all support that. But are we fulfilling that goal, that responsibility of providing the safest environment for our student athletes and the community if we cancel the season? Or is having a season with rigid mitigation procedures in place the safer, more responsible decision? Mr. Bryan, you shared last board meeting that through your discussions with other area superintendents that contact tracing is indicating that COVID is not being contracted within the school environment, but rather when students and staff have been quarantined, it is from contracts outside the school environment. An indicator that the controlled environment with mitigation procedures in place is working. Earlier today, you were provided information regarding a scientific study conducted by the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. That was one of the links that I had shared with you. I think this is a very powerful statement and something that we really need to comprehend. The study found that participation in high school sports is not associated with an increased risk of contracting COVID. Another indicator that the controlled environment with mitigation procedures in place is working. In conclusion, risk cannot only be assessed by transmission of COVID. We also have to consider the risk associated with the mental health and the risk of not providing a controlled positive outlet. Sheltering in space and living through a computer screen is just not sustainable for these kids. It's not sustainable for adults, so how can we expect our young adults to stay isolated? Providing a positive activities with proven benefits while mitigating those risks decreases the chance that they will turn to less desired ones. These kids have learned a valuable lesson not to take things for granted. I truly believe this will motivate them to social distance outside the school setting also. As a parent and as a coach, I believe these kids deserve a chance to execute this plan that's been put forth. On behalf of the basketball parents and student athletes, please vote yes to start our season and competition on November 16th. One last thing, the girls had reached out to me yesterday and they asked me to present a little short video clip that they put together that I would like to share at this time.
Thank you, Chad.
We like
Yes.
that.
Hi, I am Lauren Milne, a senior this year. Lodi basketball means the world to me because it has given me a second family and has shown me what it's like to truly love the sport. I think that I can say that when my teammates and I are working hard in the gym, the whole world kind of just disappears around us, and so do all of our problems. I hope that you will let us seniors and our teammates have our last shot at some unfinished business.
My name is Haley Rosslin, I'm a senior this year, and being able to play this season all gives us a chance to slowly start redirecting our life. You know that it won't be the same. Also, it gives us an opportunity for myself and the Valley seniors to play together for the last time and show off all of our hard work and time we put in the past.
Hi, I'm Paige Walzer, and I'm a senior at Lodi High School, and I think we should have a season for a number of different reasons. One being I've been with some of these girls since elementary school through middle school and up to high school, and to have the last season kind of just taken away without any notice has been really hard mentally and physically. All we're asking is that we'll follow any guidelines, we'll follow rules. We just want to get back in the gym and be competitive in a safe environment. Because I know some girls, we've been trying to set things up at the rec, but parents are worried, and we just want to get back and be healthy. And we hope that you guys look at this with careful consideration.
Hi, my name is Jane Kolinsky. I'm a senior, and this girls' basketball season would mean a lot because it marks the end of me and 5 other of my teammates being a Blue Devil. We have been playing basketball since 2nd grade, and this season would mean a lot because it's a chance to look back at what we've accomplished together and what we have done for each other. And it would be the end of a 10-year chapter with a family that I will have forever.
Hi, I'm Taylor Ripp. I'm a senior here at Lodi. Girls basketball gives me the opportunity to become family with my peers and make lifelong memories. Over the 3 years of basketball I have played in high school, I have learned many lifelong lessons that help me be the person I am today. As a senior, I want to be able to play for the last time and represent the town that has supported me so much.
Hi, my name's Ella Poles. I'm a junior at Lodi High School and I play girls basketball. Lodi basketball has helped me with my mental health. I've always struggled with my mental health, but it's gotten especially worse during the whole pandemic and feeling isolated, as I'm sure it has for many kids. Basketball gives me a safe place to go whether I'm happy or sad, and it always gives me something to look forward to. It gives me something to work hard at, and it gave me a team that I can now call my second family. Basketball makes me feel like I have a purpose. We have worked way too hard to have our season be taken away from us, so I would hope you would consider giving us a shot to show this town what we can do and how far we can go. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire and I'm a senior at Lodi High School. The year 2020 has not been like any other year we had. This has been extremely hard for the seniors. We've been with each other since 2nd grade, almost every single practice day and night. We've had so many dance parties in the locker room and so many memories made on the bus. We pushed each other so hard on and off the court to be the best ball player we can be. It would be so sad for our season to end with no final goodbye on the court. We've all had to put in countless hours and dedication to work and push one another. My team has worked so hard for this year. My team means the world to me. They're my second family. I wouldn't have wanted to go through this year with anyone else. When I started high school basketball as a freshman, after each game we would huddle and tell everyone we love them. And I just want to say I love my team so much. And I don't want the season to end with no final goodbye.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have more. We have more.
Let me go.
The time limit get changed to 5 minutes, it was always 3.
Yeah. I don't know, but let him speak.
It's got, yeah, you gotta speak. I'll go 1 minute. For you. Promise.
Do you wanna go?
Yep, I'll go. Oh, you're actually speaking. I will.
Yeah, he's actually speaking.
I will. I'm up next.
Okay,
And
state
so-
your full name, please.
It's Brent Richter. I'm the Norski Co-op head coach. And I wrote something full of passion when I was listening to Cody Endress speak. It's a mirror image of exactly what he was saying. So I'm going to disregard this and I'm going to go off the cuff. Let me just tell you a little bit about the Norski Co-op. We are 4 schools. Lodi is one of the schools, DeForest, Poinette, and Columbus. Our co-op has 11 Lodi students this year. Super proud of that. I don't believe there's going to be games in Dane County this year, so I went ahead and booked a 20-game season outside of Dane County. We are at the mercy of the DeForest Area School District Medical Advisory Committee letting us play. We're also at the mercy of you letting us play. Your decision tonight will guide where we go with our co-op. Don't mean to put any pressure on you. I trust you and appreciate you. You're smarter than me. And but it is the reality because what Cody said is exactly the same, and what the basketball coaches said, is exactly the same. Right now, Many schools in the Dane County area are building midget teams. That's a U18 club team. And they're gonna go find games. I will be out, it's okay. My son will go play on a midget team, probably. But there will be no regulations, the same as they articulated earlier. So I don't need to go into that any more than what you already heard. I do wanna just share one last thing before I step off and let Ted go, is that hockey is a high-risk sport, so I don't know if you're gonna talk about that any different than the other sports. I'm confused by this, and so are hockey people. We're confused. And I'll tell you why that I'm sort of confused by it. First off, I did submit a safety plan to you, and it's in your board packet. I just want to highlight a couple things. One is that hockey players are covered head to toe with equipment. We just are, right? So, and that obviously in itself provides a protection against the virus, to at least to skin and non-facial parts. The second is we have face shields. I brought the helmet in, but I ran in here last minute, and it's a full face shield. It's plastic. It's, some cases it's better than what people wear in their professional setting. There are also other companies, some companies are building like a tear-off for the ventilation area down here, just to further protect players. Another piece, which USA Hockey, which is our governing body for our young athletes, has done a study, and close contact, so a check, 2 seconds per incident, and then we're off. Hockey players have contact within a 6-foot radius, 3 minutes a whole game, that's it. Another thing that is pretty unique to hockey facilities, robust ventilation systems. I mean barn fans at the end, 2 on that end, 2 on that end, 1 pushing, 1 pulling. So we've got to keep the air moving. So it's much better than a lot of typical recreation gyms and spaces. And just a couple more things. Our kids have not used locker rooms. We've been going since July 13th with weekly practices, club driven, 0 COVID cases. No, we aren't doing face-to-face contact or competition, but we've had zero cases of COVID. They don't go into the locker rooms. They're in seats that are 6 feet apart. They come in masked. They don't take the mask off until they put the helmet on. Then we move into the ice, do our drills. They head back out, put the mask on, redress, and then they leave. That's what we would do during game times. Probably very few spectators, and you've seen that. So now I'm just going farther, but the only real issue for us is the bench, how to manage the bench. And that would be the big question if I was in your chair. We would have 6 or 7 people on the bench, spaced as much as possible, with possibly a gator pulled up, if possible, between shifts. 5 on the ice. So that would be the big question. That's what we're trying to answer. Otherwise, I just want you to know what I was saying in my last sentence is that, just like they said, it's not hockey, it's not the classroom. It's the social interaction out there, what you already know. That's where the transmission is happening. And my last paragraph is, I just want you to know as a community member, I appreciate you. I've watched you for several months now wrestle with this, and I trust you. The decision you're gonna make is the right one. There's no doubt about it. So thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Brent, I knew you'd try and steal my limelight.
Sorry, Ted.
Well, you've always been, so.
Ted, you have to state your full name for the audience.
Yep. My name's Ted Trader. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to clarify and hopefully help everybody make a good decision on what we're trying to accomplish tonight. My wife, Chris, and I have 5 children in the Lodi School District, ranging from a senior down to 2 twins that are in 4th grade OSC. I'm not a native Lodinian, but myself and my kids and my family, we bleed blue. We love Lodi. There's so many great things here. It's an awesome place. We landed here 15 years ago, and everything that we do has become Lodi. It's been awesome. We love everything that it has to offer here. It's a big credit to you guys and the administration for everything that you provide for us. So with all the negativity surrounding our situation, the school, the world, the high school sports, extracurricular activities, I want to talk about the success stories that I'm seeing because I travel, I go to AAU sporting events, I see a lot of things that go on, and I hope that provides some perspective for you guys to gather a little bit more information. This decision directly affects my entire family and all 5 of my kids, but not only does it affect them, it affects hundreds of kids that I've coached over the years and that I want to see given an opportunity. So the AAU programs, These are club teams that travel to different locations and play tournaments. My oldest son Trey is a basketball player. That's a passion of ours, it's a passion of his. We love that. His original season was canceled. They canceled everything just like it was back in March. Everything got canceled. As they viewed this and watched through things, just like a lot of organizations, they started to put plans in place to figure out how they could do it safely and move forward with it. So in July, events started to happen, slowly but surely. Safely, protocols were put in place. Everybody started learning more about the whole science of the COVID. And it wasn't easy. It's always a process, and we're still continuing to learn about it. But the events that we traveled to were throughout Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, all over the Midwest. And I give a lot of credit to the events and the venues because they had very strict routines, they had very strict protocols, and to my knowledge, there were no COVID outbreaks at all. And we would have been notified because we would have had to have been notified of that information. So we were very happy that they put all those protocols in place to keep everyone safe. Chad Milne and the coaches have also put a great plan together, and you know, that's what we want to talk about tonight. We want to make sure that we can do things safely for the kids. Our kids want to represent the Lodi High School. They don't want to play for club teams, and as I could hear Brent talk about that too, there are going to be opportunities if that doesn't happen, but that's not what kids want to do. They want to play for their Lodi school. They want to play for Lodi, and we feel we can do this successfully. As we all know, mental health issues are on the rise. As parents, this is of great concern to us. In Dane County, there are more suicides as of last week than we had all of last year. This info is in the article that Chad sent out earlier this morning for your references. But let's look at the success stories that have been happening around us lately. Big Ten football. Big Ten football was an original one that shut everything down. Just like everybody, everything was cut. Everything was done. But as you've witnessed and watched, they've gathered information across the U.S., they've seen how people have done it successfully, and they've moved forward with it. So, I don't know, but I sure enjoyed the Big Ten game on Friday night. It was fun to watch the Badgers again. So, beyond the Badger football team, Badger basketball is practicing successfully. Badger wrestling is practicing successfully. Forward Madison Soccer is a soccer team in Madison, also doing the same thing. They're competing in Wauwatosa, but they've been playing and doing the same thing successfully. As we look at our neighbors, Poynette and Portage, they're offering hybrid school, but they're also offering all their sports, and they've been doing that successfully. Sauk Prairie, same scenario, offering hybrid learning and offering all their sports successfully, which is what we want to see. Dane County, which is a big concern for everybody, obviously. That's what everybody is kind of viewing and seeing how they're doing things. Not everything is shut down in Dane County. There's a lot of opportunities that are going on there right now. Madison Country Day School, their entire school is back in session. I actually talked to them today, and it was amazing how much information they were happy to give me, because they said, you know what, Ted? They said, the kids are back. They are loving this. I've never seen the kids happier. It's fantastic. But when she told me that, she also said, we're offering volleyball, we're offering basketball, and we're offering karate, which I don't know as much about karate, but I know it could be similar to wrestling, so it's a very similar type sport. So, and she said we're doing all that successfully. But like every school, she did say we have a plan in place, just like we're trying to put in place to make sure things are done safely. Madison Edgewood is virtual and having sports. Marshall is virtual and having sports. To my knowledge and sources, all private schools, private Catholic schools in Madison, K through 8, other than Queen of Peace, are having school and doing it successfully. Just down the road from us, Blessed Trinity Catholic School in Dane, which is in Dane County, is doing it successfully. Let's move on to Lodi Sports Contact Days. So who hasn't enjoyed seeing the bright lights and the new turf field? It's been great watching the kids play out there. I mean, we've all been waiting for that. But the football has been doing it successfully. Soccer has been doing it successfully. Volleyball contact days, similar to an indoor sport. Volleyball has been doing it successfully also. They're wearing masks, they're playing, they're practicing, doing the protocols the way we want them to do it. These are all great success stories for our kids. So, as I'm sure you've all done research and read a lot of these articles, what I wanted to finish with is the report that the UW released last week. Chad sent that article out earlier today too, and you can find it on wisports.net, or you can Google the UW research. But important things that had to offer, and some key details, and it's just a few details I'm gonna throw out. Researchers and health officials collaborated with the WIAA. With these details, 207 schools, 30,000 athletes, 16,000 practices, 4,000 games. There was one known instance of a COVID-19 transmission from sport contact out of the 271 positive cases.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so my name is Cindy McDonald. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I guess the one word, I spent today and talked to some people and looked at some stuff on Facebook, and I think the one thing that comes to me is hope. Hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Don't take hope from all of us. It is in your hands. You know that you will not stop these kids from playing. I feel like, for a better lack of words, you need to step up to the plate. I feel like you're sort of putting your head in the sand and being chicken about this. I know that's not all politically correct by saying that, but I feel like it's the truth. I feel like parents, we feel hopeless. We feel like you're not on our side. We feel like we don't have options. You have heard all these coaches, people get up there and speak tonight with more than enough proof that we can successfully have a fall sports season. I personally been married for 33 years and I have 8 boys. Most of them have come through Lodi. Currently, I have 3 kids that are sophomores. I will say the teachers have done an amazing job. My sophomores are doing absolutely awesome. I mean, I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes, but they probably get tired of me emailing them. But I feel like the school district is trying as hard as they can. I get that, and I'm not putting anyone down for that. But I also feel like we're also put in the Dane County category, and we're not in Dane County. I have 3 kids that are sophomores, and all 3 of them do sports. And then I also have one that's in 1st grade. Now, I've chosen to take him out of the district, and I found a school where he could go all day, every day. And it's been successful. They wear masks, they're in small groups, not one single COVID outbreak. And he's gone almost one whole semester. He's learning, he's reading, he's happy, they play sports. All I'm saying is there is a way. We're all willing to do whatever we have to do. The kids are willing to do it. They've been great. I just feel sometimes, and I think a lot of other people in the community, and I'm speaking on behalf of people that I'm friends with, that I know, that I talk to, I care about this community. I have an outreach that I do, try to help people, get them food, anything that can help. And I just feel like that sometimes the perception is that when you go into the board meeting, you've already made up your mind. You do these public forums because you have to cross your T's and dot your I's, you know. But the bottom line is that really think about this. Don't just put your head in the sand and be a chicken shit about it. I'm sorry, I mean to swear. But it's very passionate to so many of us. If you take this from these kids, all you're doing is taking the blood off of your hands, because I guarantee you they will find places to go, they will play, and then some of them will go into depression. Parents are struggling, children are struggling. We're all trying to abide by the CDC guidelines, wearing masks. I work in Dane County. I'm very thankful we've not had any issues in our family, or no one that I know has contracted COVID, but I know that there are millions that have. I'm not belittling what is going on by any means. I just want to put it out there, and I'm sorry, I feel so nervous, and I'm talking to silence on the other side, so you feel like you're just rattling on. Sometimes my husband does that to me. Anyway, but no, seriously, I just feel, I know your job is not easy, and I respect you for what you're trying to do. Just stand up for us, though. Fight for us. Give us a shot. Let us prove to you that we will not let you down. That's all I'm telling you. These kids will not let you down. We will not let you down. You know, my son goes to the University of Iowa, and he's a Hawkeye. One of the first things his coach, Tom Brand, told him is you deserve what you earn. Let us earn this. Let us prove to you that we can do this. We are Lothianians. We're strong, and we can successfully show you that we can do this. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I look forward to hearing what your decision is, and I hope you guys all have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Travis put down that he was Google, but then there was a phone number behind it, so
I see
he
that.
may be Google.
612's out of the area, so still got to dial 1, right?
Hit that 8 first and then
Yeah,
1.
yeah.
Yep.
That's the right number.
Guys, I'm very sorry. I just wanted to watch the board meeting. I did not want to comment.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
Sorry, thank you. Good
Bye.
luck.
He was on there twice.
Sorry,
Jake Montag.
is not available. Record your message.
You want me to just double check the phone number?
Let's try that again. That's not the right person. Imagine dialing a wrong number and then.
No pressure.
Being public.
No pressure there. Al.
Sorry,
Jake Montag.
is not available. Record your message.
So I'm dialing the right number. For Julie?
Just double checking. I was happy to 29272. Yep.
You try it. You try it. You're used to using it.
Come on, Ms. Palmer, let's see the magic.
Got this poor guy keeps getting messages on
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to do it both ways, so I tried to put this in.
Who's calling? Who's calling?
He's probably sleeping.
I'm trying to phone a friend.
See the
That's the question. Oh, sorry. Just outline the scenario, Joe.
Adam doesn't want to talk to us.
Okay, sorry. Let's move on. How about that?
Is there one more?
She's gonna check one more time, hang on, before we move on. Before we move on. Okay, good. So we'll move on to the only agenda item on tonight's agenda, winter co-curriculars, discussion and action.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank everybody who came to share their thoughts or called in or on Google regarding co-curriculars. I appreciate people who had to stand outside in the cold and waited their turn to share their thoughts with the board and administration.
What's your number? Write this down, hang on a second, hang on. 608-228-2720.
All right, we were off by one.
Okay, Julie, Adam Steinberg will be calling you. All right,
You want her to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
Should be used to that by now, Bob. I mean, come on, this is what you get at home, right?
It's life.
Nobody can say we didn't try hard enough.
Michelle?
Julie?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Julie, it's Adam Steinberg at the school board.
Hi. I
Hi.
was like, oh, the wrong number.
Yeah, the wrong number. So go ahead, state your full name and then tell us what you'd like to say.
All right, my name's Julie Burkholder, and I just want to kind of voice my opinion coming from the community and, you know, as a parent from in the school district that, you know, has a kid in multiple sports and, you know, that is missing going to school. So I'm torn between the whole sport thing and the school being virtual. I feel like I want my child to be in sports. She loves it. She needs it. Mentally, she needs it. And, but I feel like it's not fair for the kids that don't play sports that don't get to go to school. You know, it's kind of a double standard coming from the athletic people and for the kids that aren't doing athletics. I mean, it's hard to take one side of a group from the other, but it's not fair. I feel like these kids need to be in school, whether it be part-time or full-time, but they need this for their mental. They need the sports and they need the school. Hello?
Yeah, we're still here. We're listening.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that you guys know that I'm very strong-worded. I do a lot for this community. I know a lot of people, and we just want to know where the numbers came from where the kids can't be in school. Is it the teachers that are saying it, or is it the members of the community? I mean, you guys can't answer me back, can you?
Right, we're not allowed to answer questions in public.
Okay. So we need that answer. We need, you know, some form of answer because there's different things that are going around, you know, of course on Facebook, you know, people are saying it's the teachers, they don't want to be back in school. Some people are saying it's the community members. Nobody has a straight answer. We need some answer from somebody because we are literally floating in just random air. And then we have kids at home that are mentally losing their mind because they can't play sports. They can't be in school, which makes no sense because, you know, they're all turning to club sports and they're still together. So I'm going to keep my voice a little bit calmer this time. And, I mean, there's a lot more other things I'd like to say, but I just need to keep it cordial. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Vince.
Yeah, that's okay. As I said, we're just thankful that people who are willing to share their thoughts. As with most decisions the board has been faced with this year, this will be another one that will be difficult and will, as we've seen, elicit a lot of emotion. If the board moves forward and allows co-curriculars, many will be upset that they feel you're prioritizing athletics and co-curriculars over classroom education. If you don't allow them, people will be upset that you are not allowing students these important physical, social, and emotional activities when some schools have shown that this could be done safely. Some will accurately argue that there have been successful professional sports and college football seasons, which we heard tonight, and others will argue that we don't have the testing capabilities or resources that organizations do. For example, I know one of our presenters talked about Big Ten football and basketball and wrestling, and obviously they're testing on a daily basis with their athletes. And I know starting quarterback of the Badgers tested positive, you know, and they're talking about how long that person would be out. Following the rules of our high school and what we have to do with the state rules that we follow, the whole offense would be out just because of their standing in the huddle together throughout the course of a game, right? So there's different rules at times, and that's very confusing to people, and I get that. But there's also different resources that are being pushed towards, you know, professional sports and college sports due to the resources that are there. Some will also argue that you're not following the science if you don't allow these activities based on that new study that was referenced several times and which I shared with you last week in conjunction with the WIA that showed that there's very minimal transmission during the fall sports season. Others would argue you're not following the science when you look at most of those sports are outside. And the WIA even shares in their documentation that a viral transmission of COVID is 19 times higher indoors than outdoors. And all of our co-curriculars in the school district sponsors in the fall are going to be indoors. So you're going to be asked to make this decision with minimal guidance from the state and county leaders on this matter. As was just referenced, asking where the numbers have come from for us when we've made these decisions with our metrics. We've based it on the Harvard model, Sauk County Public Health, Georgetown's model, Dane County Public Health, School District of Green Bay, State of Minnesota plan. So we've looked at all of those different things. I've also heard reference that we need to stop following Dane County. I heard that a couple times today. Right now, Dane County looks a lot better than Columbia County. The case numbers are per 100,000 residents, per 10,000. Per 10,000 residents in Dane County, the cases are 40. 40. Per 100,000, or sorry, per 10,000 residents in Columbia County, our cases are 102. We're almost 2.5 times higher cases, and our positivity rate is significantly higher. So as we talked about, we've talked about before, is, you know, as a community, you know, that's been the frustrating part as these numbers continue to rise. And there's mitigation pieces that schools have used to make sure that that doesn't happen in schools. But that transmission rate outside of schools is really difficult because our kids are living that and our staff are living that, and they're bringing that into our buildings, as people have seen when I've been sending these messages out when we've had COVID positive cases in our district. So again, you're going to be asked to make decisions based on minimal guidance from the state and county. We are going to put together a presentation. I've asked the high school administrative team of Joe Jelnick, Jason Marshall, and Sue Mefford, our athletic director, to put together a presentation to kind of walk you through, to help you make this decision. What they're going to cover is how did fall sports go for Lodi? How have the WIA contact days gone for our coaches and athletes? How did our other area schools do with athletics in the fall? What have we learned from hosting events this fall? Considerations we might, and recommendations we would put in place if we did have winter co-curriculars, general and per activity. What are the positives and negatives of offering co-curriculars in the winter? What's our surrounding conferences doing? And what are the capital conference plans and expectations? So I will now turn it over to Ms. Mefford, Mr. Marshall, and Mr. Jelnick to give their presentation.
All right, I'm first up, so if we can have the slideshow presentation put up. The first slide would say winter athletics information.
It is up, Ms. Mefford.
Excellent. So then we can go right to number 2, the fall sport recap. So as you know, we had tennis and cross country this fall. Tennis competed in 9 different matches, plus they competed in the WIA tournament. we had 2 tennis matches that were canceled due to COVID concerns with the opposing team. Cross country, they were in 7 different duels, and they also just finished this weekend in the WIA tournament series. As far as cancellations, we had 1 girls' meet that was canceled because, again, the opponent had some issues on their team. And then middle school, they competed in 5 different duels. Unfortunately, they had 2 meets that were canceled due to COVID-related concerns on the opponent team. During our season this fall, we had 1 positive test for COVID-19, and then 7 people that were quarantined either due to symptoms or exposure to somebody else that was positive for COVID. At our home events, we limited it to 2 spectators per household from each student athlete. And then overall, we felt that our guidelines and mitigation efforts that we had in place were generally pretty successful. Next slide, please. As far as contact days, you've seen pictures posted, I'm sure that we've had some football contact days, boys and girls soccer, and wrestling have been out in the stadium, turf field, and other areas. Dance team was out there tonight. Volleyball has been doing some open gyms, and I believe they're finishing up, or they just completed their open gym for the time being. So the format that we use for those is similar to what we had for the summer. Individual work 6 feet away from each other, masked when they're entering and exiting, and if they were closer than 6 feet, they were also masked. Coaches gave us a plan, just similar to what the winter coaches talked to you about tonight, a plan for how to try to successfully run a practice. So we looked that over as an admin team and approved those and worked with Gene Winter to make sure that everything was considered pretty safe. During the contact days, so far we've had 3 positive cases and we've had 7 quarantines because of, again, symptoms or exposure to somebody. With those positive cases in our sports this fall as well as the contact days, it doesn't seem to show any evidence of transmission within our activities. So most likely outside sources, and it hasn't been transferred within the practice or within the event. Thank you, next slide. I reached out to our conference schools that had 12 sports, and I also reached out to some surrounding ones like Sauk and Portage and Baraboo, Reedsburg, talked to their ADs to ask them how their fall seasons have gone. So some of them were not able to offer sports of the 14 that I contacted because they were in Dane County and or their school boards chose not to offer the sports this fall. So 11 had seasons this fall. 10 out of those 11 were able to complete all of their seasons. 7 out of the 11 said they didn't have to shut down at any time during the fall season. The schools that did have to shut down, it was a variety of sports, so you can't just say it was one high contact sport. It was everything from tennis to football to cross country, so everybody had some, if they had to cancel, it was a variety of things. Same with the cancellations. 8 out of 11 had some cancellations for some of their teams at some of the different levels. All of them were competing in end of season events. I do know, I was reading online this weekend that obviously the masks have been in place, and I believe it was Sauk Prairie said, the article I read was their head coach was not able to coach this weekend because of being in quarantine because of a contact with another person, but they didn't sound like they had a quarantine on their team. So, next slide, please. So what's changed? I think we touched on this already. The WIA has given us guidance for winter sports that our coaches have gone through as well as the administrative team. We are able to learn from the schools that competed in those moderate and high-risk sports this fall. The UW-Madison study, which has been referenced numerous times tonight, there's a link on that for you. We were able to test out our protocols for running our low-risk activities this fall. And what else is gonna change for winter is being indoors. We have our installation of our live stream camera set up for December 14th. So starting at that point, we will be able to live stream activities in our high school gym. If winter sports are allowed, what I would plan on doing is I would probably try to rotate, so our JV2 teams and our JV teams both get some chance to be live streamed in the gym, so they may play at alternate locations so that all families can see their child or family members participating on the live stream. And that's it on that slide. So next slide, and I think that turns it over.
Yeah, so I'm going to take it from there.
Jason.
So this fall, having some of our low-risk sports compete, we learned a lot about how to run these events. So one of the things that we discovered is it's a lot easier for us to manage a home event versus an away event. Because we are able to sort of dictate those guidelines and have our protocols in place. This is a challenge that Mr. Delnick's going to talk about a little bit later. So our conferences come together for winter athletics to help us unify some of our expectations. One of the challenges that we would run into is the expectations for an away event would be different than a home event. So it's just a little bit more challenging to set and maintain consistent expectations when it's different from site to site. Overall, we saw that student compliance with social distancing and masking has been really good. And I got to give a huge shout out to our coaches because they really set the tone for that to make sure that things are, practices are being run and events are being run with the way that they need to be successful at this time. Parent compliance at events overall has been okay. I would say that it's not been quite as universally accepted as the students, but overall it's been good with some exceptions. Overall, our mitigation strategies seem to work. The pre-screening process that we send to our student athletes before every practice and every event works really well at identifying students who may have had a close COVID-19 contact or who may be symptomatic. The pre-screening of fans and opponents is a little bit more challenging for us to administer than for students, and a little bit more challenging for us to ensure that there's compliance from those fans who are showing up. So that's something that we've reworked a little bit differently in our expectations for this winter based on what we did this fall. And while we've been pretty good at ensuring 6-foot social distancing, it really is difficult and will be increasingly difficult with fall sports, with winter sports, to maintain 6-foot social distancing at all times. But overall, I think that our student athletes have done well with the measures that we've put in place. The next couple of slides are going to talk about our recommendations and our considerations for sports. So we break it down. There are 3 slides that are considerations that will be for all sports, and then a couple of sports-specific items as well. A lot of these are covered within each individual program's proposal they sent along, and almost all of this is pulled from the WIA information. So obviously, cloth face coverings must be worn indoors in accordance with the governor's mandate and our school district LOI policy. Face coverings are recommended in all settings where people may come into contact with others, including during competitions. We do expect our student athletes to wear a mask during competition. Some of our coaches talked about podding today, and those pods, not only will they practice together, but we will also bus them to competitions separately, again, to try to limit any mixing of those pods that would take place. We'll obviously need crowd control to ensure that masks are being worn by spectators and to assist with making sure that social distancing is maintained. There will be a rotation of cleaning locker rooms and equipment, limiting shared materials, and trying to maintain 6-foot social distancing to separate student athletes on benches and sidelines, and really whenever possible. Hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies will be available at all practices and competitions. Again, we're going to limit that sharing of equipment. Athletes will be asked to wash their practice clothes daily. And team huddles will be changed to make sure that we can follow social distancing guidelines as much as possible. On the next slide. So additionally, these are all sport considerations. If we're using locker rooms, social distancing will need to be maintained, and we'll have a separate locker room for each of those pods and for those cohort groups. We would propose, which the WRA proposes, to eliminate concession sales to reduce fan congestion. One of the things that we will do is keep a record of all student athletes that are present at practice to, again, on the back end, help with contact should that need arise. As coaches look at designing practices, obviously there will be times where social distancing can't be maintained. But trying to maintain that distance as much as possible during workouts and drills and during the breaks and during sidelines during competition. Just like in the fall, student athletes need to bring their own water to practice. And we'll have some bottles available for them. Those pods of athletes will be used whenever possible. So looking to target that around 5 to 10 athletes so that we're limiting that exposure to a smaller group. One of the things that we'll be looking at is spacing out our groups so that there's minimized congestion at exits and entrances. For instance, in between a JV and a varsity basketball game, we're going to clear the gym and sanitize that gym. Then we'll have a separate start time for varsity so we can get all of those JV fans and players out, sanitize the area, then bring in the crew for varsity. Obviously looking to avoid congregation before, during, and after practice, and establish those procedures that I was just talking about for getting spectators in and out of events. On the next slide, we'll be looking at ways to set up our gym space to maximize social distancing to make sure that our spectators are spread out. We're going to continue on with the 2 spectators per athlete. And we'll do that on a ticket system. There's no cost for admission. The spectator must have a ticket to get in. And again, 2 tickets per student athlete. And those tickets would need to be given to somebody who is within the same family as that student athlete. We will make available all of our mitigation strategies and procedures prior to the event to anyone who may be in attendance. We'll continue to screen all participants, coaches, event personnel, and officials. Spectators, we will have COVID screening posted at the door, letting them know the symptoms of COVID-19, letting them know that if they have any of those symptoms or have had a close contact, that they should not attend our event. We're going to make sure that we maintain a list of those spectators at each event. We're going to ask our coaches to sort them out that, so that if there's a need to contact trace, we have that information available to us. We have that information this fall. We just got it through sort of a pre-screening, so this would be a little bit different system. Obviously, we'll have a communication plan in place to notify any attendees if there's a positive COVID test before, during, or after an event. And then looking at prioritizing people into the event as needed. But at this time, we feel pretty comfortable having, obviously, our players, our coaches, our officials, and then 2 spectators per family. So we do have some sport-specific considerations, starting with basketball. Similar to the fall, we're going to schedule local, single-day competitions, so no tournaments, no multi-team events. We're going to look at a maximum of 2 days per week and avoid back-to-back days. That way there's some time in between those exposures to those students. The WIA recommends that basketball should be cleaned and disinfected frequently, so we'll have a rotation of game balls. As I mentioned before, the gym will be cleared of all personnel after each game to make sure that there's sanitation or sanitizing happening before the next event. We'll look to put our spectators on the opposite side of the gym and at least 6 feet from the sideline of the court. and make sure that they're socially distanced. Team benches, likewise, will also be socially distanced, as well as the sport table personnel, athletic trainer, etc. Each visiting team will be asked to bring their own balls for warm-up to minimize any sort of sharing of equipment. And then we'll keep that rotation of game balls throughout the game and make sure that we're sanitizing those frequently. To help minimize the number of people in the gym, we do propose not having any halftime show or game announcer or basketball events. So next, some considerations for wrestling. We'd be looking at scheduling a wrestling event every 6 to 7 days. Again, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in between those exposures. Similarly, scheduling local single opponent single day competitions instead of any tournament or multi-team event. Making sure that headgear is sanitized frequently, similar to basketball, putting those spectators on the opposite side of the gym, and at least 6 feet from the mat. Social distancing those team benches. For wrestling, we'll plan to use a rotation of mats, so that after each event, we can sanitize the mat, and then rotate to a new mat, and keep that rotation going. So we have not only sanitation, but we have the time built in to allow that mat to dry completely. One of the wrestling considerations from the WIA, which is a safety thing, is student athletes are not allowed to wear a buff or a neck beater, so for wrestlers that would need to be a mask. Next up, some considerations for our co-op hockey team. Again, we're looking at local, single-day competitions. Similar to basketball, we'd be looking at 1 to 2 games per week. Sanitizing helmets, gloves, and other protective gear. Not using benches for practices. And similar to what Brent said, both of our hockey teams play on a co-op. So both of those schools right now are planning on starting the season on time with practices and workouts, as allowed by Dane County Public Health. And then competitions will be added, as they're able to, or outside of Dane County. And lastly, for our dance team, making sure that we're using physical distancing to minimize the contact between those dancers, sanitizing comms, and other equipment. One of the things with halftime is we need to find a different way for them to perform. So planning performances that can be viewed by family members and looking to stream those performances as well for our spectators. So those are some of the sports-specific and universal expectations that we'd be looking at for winter sports. We go over to Mr. Jellick now, who's going to keep this rolling.
All right, thanks, Jason. I'm going to cover the positives and negatives of winter sports that have been really talked about for the past months and weeks related to COVID-19 and athletics. So first thing, some of the positives that were actually brought up, I think, through some of our public input. It was spoken of the social, emotional, and physical outlet for student athletes for them to be able to participate in sports. And also the sense of normalcy, getting back to what was normal to them before and just getting them active again. Speaking specifically of seniors, you heard some of the seniors speak tonight. It will allow seniors to complete their senior season. School districts may have better mitigation strategies than clubs and other non-school venues. So club sports were spoken of a little bit tonight. And I feel very comfortable, especially with our fall mitigation strategies that we use, that can continue compared to some of the non-school venues that club sports are playing in. There will be a limited effect on the regular student body if a student athlete needs to quarantine during the enhanced online educational model. So again, they're going to be in their cohorts of sports, and in some cases even smaller cohorts depending on the sport. And it is not going to affect teaching and learning. It's not going to affect the entire classroom. It's not going to affect the school. Many of those students, if they did have to quarantine, would just continue their online learning. And it's also not gonna affect our staff here at school, unless, of course, our staff is the coach that has to quarantine, but then, again, they would be able to continue their teaching from home. Able to test our mitigation strategies with a large number of people or groups before bringing more students into the building. So we all know that that is our goal, to get kids into the building, for teaching and learning first and foremost, and then to provide them all the activities that not only high school, but middle school, elementary, and primary school offers to them. So this is giving us an opportunity to test those mitigation strategies before we start bringing in larger groups of kids. Social distancing can be easily accommodated for 2 spectators per student athlete. If you're talking about the gymnasium, let's say a basketball game, we're talking about 12 athletes on each team, so 24, so between 50 and 60 fans in our gymnasium is going to be really manageable. And then successful fall seasons have occurred within our district and other schools with limited issues, and Ms. Medford talked about that just a little bit. Next slide, please. So some of the negatives, and again, these are some of the discussion points that have been made again over the last weeks and months related to COVID-19. The first negative, COVID numbers are higher than this fall when we offered outdoor low-risk sports. Mr. Ryan talked a little bit about Columbia County and what it looks like in Columbia County. So obviously the numbers are higher. School and community may be at a higher risk if we do have winter sports. Not many kids are being educated in the classroom. And if you go down a couple of bullet points, it says perception that sports are more important than academics, and students are not learning in school buildings. It kind of looks like we're presenting a double standard, that we're going to allow some kids to come in, and then other kids, and again, our most important goal is to get kids into the building to go to learn. It was mentioned transmission levels may be 19 times more likely indoors, that was mentioned by the WIA. Some student athletes may not answer the COVID screener, honestly, because they don't want to quarantine or be the one that causes the team to quarantine. So that is a concern of ours, that you don't want to be that athlete that's not going to allow your team to play 1 week or 2 weeks, or you're going to have to potentially take some of your teammates out because you're going to have to quarantine, or you may test positive. Some families may not feel comfortable having their child participate due to concerns about COVID. And I know it's a choice, and that's important, so some families may opt out, but we feel like there might be some pressures to participate because of that. And then the long-term effects of COVID are unknown. So those are some of the positives and negatives that have been spoken of, like I mentioned over the last weeks and months related to COVID-19 athletics. If you go to the next slide, conferences and what they have decided to do with winter sports. And then I'm going to finish up with the Capital Conference. So right now, the Big 8 major conferences have announced that they will not have conference games and championships, since all member schools are not able to participate fully in conference contests this winter. Big 8 being mostly Dane County, Badger Conference, Dane County, and Lewisburg, South and Greene County. Madison will not hold any winter athletics in person, nor encourage students to gather or train together outside of school grounds through January 24th. January 24th kind of being near the end of their first semester and the beginning of their second semester. Sun Prairie plans on starting winter sports, this winter sports season, on their scheduled start dates, but they have suspended all athletic competitions through January 22nd. So they do want to get the kids out there practicing and giving them a chance to exercise and be with their teammates and help with some of the social emotional concerns that they might have. But again, they're not going to be able to compete until January 22nd. Middleton winter sports season competitions and games are on hold. They will begin winter sports practices as scheduled in accordance with the PHNBC guidance. They will also consider separate non-conference only seasons for winter sports. And that's what some of the other conferences are going to do as well. And then finally, Verona has started their return to athletics, will coincide with their return to school. They will leave open the possibility of an earlier return in accordance with PHNBC reopening recommendations. So that's public health in Madison, Dane County. Finally, the last slide that I'm going to cover is Capital Conference in schools. So if you go there, we did. So we did have a principal and superintendent's meeting last week to kind of gather some information from the other conference schools on what direction they're going to be heading for winter sports. And as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. Lake Mills, Lakeside, Marshall is a little bit iffy as far as because it's a Dane County school, so they are going to go ahead with all sports, but their games are going to have to be played away. Waterloo and Luther Prep, so those schools are going to go ahead with basketball, wrestling, and any other winter sports. Cambridge basketball with wrestling being questionable. And then there are several schools that are undecided, including Lodi. So Cambridge, New Glarus, they're undecided. New Glarus and Poynette are undecided. There's a meeting tonight with regards to winter sports in New Glarus. Poynette, they have a meeting tomorrow to talk about winter sports. Belleville is also in Dane County, so they're going to find it very difficult to run the season. If they do, they're going to have away events. Columbus is undecided, but wants to try and play basketball with wrestling being questionable. And again, if you didn't know, basketball is considered a medium risk sport, and wrestling is considered a high risk sport. Wisconsin Heights, they are also in Dane County, so they find it very difficult to run the season. What they're going to do is similar to some of the schools in Dane County, other schools in Dane County I mentioned, different conferences, and that is they are going to start practices with the intention to possibly play or not, and they're going to revisit that question later on. I know Wisconsin Heights has a co-op with soccer and wrestling, and hockey and swimming, and they are allowing their athletes to participate in that co-op. And then of course, Lodi, we are undecided, we're going to make that decision tonight. The next slide is the capital conference expectations. I believe Sue Meffert is going to cover this. Thank you.
Yes, and I just wanted to add, if you go back, or if we talk about the Badger Conference, some of the other schools that are not in Dane County have reached out to me to see if we'd be interested in scheduling, if we're allowed to do any winter sports. So like Sauk, Portage, Baraboo, Reedsburg have reached out about wrestling already, and we have some non-conference basketball potentially scheduled with them as well. So they are all moving forward with their sports, and they're not as limited in that part of the Badger Conference because of their county location. So capital conference expectations. Last week when the principals and the superintendents met, they came up with 4 decisions right now that all participants, so the players, the coaches, the officials, the score table personnel will have face masks on during the contest. All the spectators, and again, the event workers would be required to wear a mask as well. The conference is saying 4 spectators per household, but Lodi, we're gonna stay with our 2 like we did this fall. So we're gonna be a little more strict than what some of the away games may be. And then participants will need to complete some type of a COVID-19 screener, and then that's gonna be verified by the coach or the athletic director that day, I'm sorry. And so what the WIA has given us is a verification form, so you have to sign off on that, the tracing sheet, and tell them that, yes, we've screened our players, nobody is showing symptoms, nobody's been exposed, nobody has tested positive on that particular day. So that's really not anything different than what we've done this fall, except that we have I signed a sheet of paper that acknowledges that it's correct. Undecided items, we don't know if there'll be a conference championship in any of our sports. Don't know if we would limit basketball to 1 game a week or do crossovers with basketball in other schools. So those are kind of things that will have to be determined once we know what schools are able to compete in what sports this winter. And as ADs, I know we have a meeting coming up in a few weeks, and then we'll talk through some of those issues as well. If you go to the next slide, so here comes the big slide for everybody. This is what it comes down to. So basically, there's kind of 4 options. One, as a board, you decide to allow all winter athletics, including middle school, to meet, practice, and compete per district in WIA considerations. So that would be starting WIA start dates and competing once they get their minimum number of days of practice in before competition. The second option we have on there is you allow all winter athletics to start practice on their traditional start dates as governed by the WIA, but you delay the competitions until December 7th. That gives us a little bit of a break after that Thanksgiving time, gives us a chance to practice a little bit, see if we have any issues going on, and then it gives us time after the Thanksgiving break where people are probably going to be more exposed. Another option is saying no to winter sports, so you cancel winter athletics. Unfortunately, with winter sports, as you guys mentioned at the last board meeting, is if winter sports are not going, you choose not to allow them, there is no other option for them. There's not an alternate season scheduled by the WIA. And then other, you could choose, some examples we thought of would be maybe not offering middle school or only offering varsity at the high school level, or there's probably a dozen other decisions or options that you could make, or even more. That's kind of where we're at. So the next slide would be if we have any questions. We'll be happy to answer any questions that might be specific to anybody, I guess.
Does anyone have any specific questions?
I have a question. So who is going to be doing all the disinfecting? Do we need more people? Is it going to be, I mean, I don't know how much you thought, I mean, there was so much work put into this, so thank you, everybody that was involved. But my thought was, who are we gonna add, do we have to add extra people? You know, that's what I was wondering. Or can people volunteer to do that? That doesn't seem likely since only 2 can go per person. So that was my first thought after listening to everything.
Yeah, what we would ask is our coaches to be a
Okay.
part of most of that. Right, so in basketball, when you're talking about disinfecting, you're talking about door handles and basketballs, right?
Okay.
Wrestling's a little bit different, where you're talking about disinfecting a mat, which they already do. If you've
Okay,
been to a
yeah.
wrestling practice, they spray down the mats frequently because they, as Mr. Miller talked about, they've been dealing with a lot of infectious diseases for a lot of years, so they really work on spraying down mats. So we would have to have coaches be involved in that. Obviously, we have deep cleaning that happens after events, will happen with our cleaning company and things of that nature. The bigger issue where we'll need staff at some point is if we start having outbreaks and things, is contact tracing, right? We are overwhelming our school nurse and other people who are doing contact tracing now, and we don't have a ton of students in, right? We have about a little over 100 students in and staff, and we are struggling to keep up with contact tracing because we're responsible for all the, anytime that there's a positive case or a close contact in our district, we are responsible for following up on that, and we would be responsible for that with all of our athletes coming in and coaching as well. So that would be somewhere where we may need to add some staff to help with some of those, like a nurse in the area. The problem is you can't just hire anybody, right? It has to be somebody who's very detail-oriented, who knows to ask the right questions, is comfortable asking the right questions and making sure that we follow through the way we need to.
Okay. That was my first thought, so I thought I'd blurt it out there.
I have a question. Does WIA allow club play if the high school seasons are approved to continue? So are there any athletics in which participants could be still doing club play in addition to the regular season?
Yeah, Sue, I'm gonna let you answer this one. Did you hear that question?
I did. So during the season for basketball and wrestling, they do not allow them to participate in club. There's some exceptions when we get later into the spring. They made a couple exceptions for this spring. But right now for winter sports, the answer is no. The question that I don't know about is if we would delay our games, because they can participate in club like they're doing right now up until the season starts. So that's where they're at right now. So the answer, I guess, easily said is no, they can't do club and high school sports at the same time.
That's my question.
You answered all my questions, so,
I guess I had one other question about there's a little bit of talk of allowing high school versus and not allowing middle school. Would that be a consideration? I guess what are some considerations there?
Well, I think the consideration of, obviously, it's the more you have in, right, the more likelihood you're gonna have kids who bring this into your buildings and share it. The other issue that becomes with middle school, more so than high school, is an equity issue a little bit of driving. Like, how do you get kids to practice, right? And in the end, you still have that problem with some freshmen and sophomore, but a lot of high school kids can drive or figure out rides, where middle school, You're probably gonna end up having to push our practices a little later. Typically, they were right after school, that 3:30 to 5:30 time. Well, that's not gonna work for most parents, right? To get kids in from, it works in town, but if you live in Dane and Harmony Grove, that's not gonna work. So you're gonna have to move those times, and we don't provide transportation for those kiddos to get in. Typically, we've done that before. And then just gym space, like making sure we can space out our gyms, that we're not having people, as you heard the basketball coaches talking, we're gonna shorten our practices down. And then, so there's time in between practices, but just making sure we have enough gym space, that we're not overlapping and that we're sanitizing and have time to wipe down balls and do those different things that we need to do. So that would be the reason not to have middle school. But the same reasons that you have high school would be the same reason you have middle school, right? Those are the same kids. It's dark at 5 o'clock at night, and there's not a whole lot of physical activity that they can do. Those kids can go play AAU basketball and club sports and things of that nature. They could still do that though if they play middle school sports. So that's still an option they would have. But it would give those kids an option to do some physical activity throughout their day. So that would be the discussion, I think, or discussion point.
Sue, so now I have questions for Sue. So if we did allow both middle school and high school, we could handle that, right?
It would be a challenge, but I think we can figure it out. One small concern I have, or with middle school boys basketball and wrestling, typically they've already started at this point. They usually start like the second, I think they would have started this past week. So the problem is with the schools that we partner with for our middle school athletics, if we don't start competing until December 7th, normally wrestling and boys basketball are done the week of Christmas. So that would give them 2.5 weeks of competition. So other schools that are offering their middle school programs are gonna probably be starting earlier and getting a few more games in. So just so we note that could happen or would happen with boys basketball. Girls basketball is later after the holiday break, so then that schedule shouldn't be too disrupted or will be disrupted at all. It will just be a gym space issue with limiting it, but if that's the route we go, we'll figure it out and make it work.
So my question is, Sue, you are the guru. What will work? Will the middle school work?
So Shelley, I have a recommendation.
Okay, I know.
So
Let me ask one more question
Go ahead.
before you go to recommendation.
Yeah.
So Sue, you said that, somebody else said, high school can't, you said Sue, high school can't do club, middle school can do club and school sports. Could we actually make them make a choice if we decided to? Where the middle school, we said, middle school students, if you want to participate in school, you can't do club.
Basically, that reason or that rationale is because we are not a member school of the WIA at the middle school level. However, we follow guidelines of the WIA as if we were middle school, so that could be an option if that's what we want to do. We could ask them to do that. How we would enforce that, I'm not certain.
That was that was the follow-up. Would we be able to enforce anything like that? Probably not, right?
Well, and I would say that the majority of our kids play club the opposite in middle school, right? So the girls typically right now would be playing club sport, girls basketball, because the boys would be playing basketball in school. And at holiday break, it would flip. The girls would now then be playing their middle school season, and the boys would be playing their club season. Not that kids can't do both, right? But it would be, that's typically how that works.
Okay, so it's not at the same time.
But there's still club events all the way through the season, right? There, Just a Game will run a tournament every single weekend up there, and other places too. You know, it's a money-making endeavor for a lot of these places, so they will run tournaments.
Okay. No, you.
And if you don't mind if I check.
Go ahead, yeah.
At being a former middle school basketball coach, it was highly recommended that they not participate club and school ball. And like Vince mentioned, they would play the club ball after the school ball season. Just because of the amount of time that they'd be playing basketball, it'd be just way too much. They'd be playing all week and they'd be playing on the weekends, so.
Okay.
It's highly recommended.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the high school administration for putting together all that information and all the coaches for putting all the time and effort they put in to their plans. I really appreciate it. Obviously, they're very passionate about it. I think they're all also caught in the same crosshairs everybody else is. They really are dedicated to their kids, right? But they're also concerned about the safety and welfare of our students on both aspects of the mental health piece of it, but also with COVID. The hard part about being where we are right now is the numbers in Columbia County are, continuing to skyrocket, which makes this really difficult. We need people to really take this seriously and do what they can to, we talk about wanting our kids in school, and a lot of us act that way, but there's other people who don't act that way, right? They talk it, but then they go and they're out and doing things. And we have to do whatever we can to help mitigate the risk, because even if we open up athletics or schools, we don't want to be bouncing back and forth. That being said, I think we need to start somewhere, and I think this is a good place to start. Because we are in an online option, having students play an athletic sport, go play a ball game in Lake Mills, puts them at a little higher risk for infection and exposure and things of that nature. By not being in person in education, they're not putting all their classmates and education at risk, because if they come back from a game at Lake Mills, walk through their high school schedule of 4 classes, and have a close contact with 4 teachers, now they've wiped out 4 classroom teachers, and it impacts a lot more education versus where we are right now. So I have several recommendations that I would make. First is that we allow winter sports to start as scheduled. However, we do not allow competition to December 7th. The reason for that is I'm not confident that families in our district or in other districts are not going to get together and spread this virus during the holidays. We've seen spikes after holidays, and this gives us about 10 days before we have competition from other, going to another community or have another community come here before we allow that competition to happen. I would recommend we follow the Capital Conference guidelines in respect to face coverings and screenings. I would recommend that we limit our spectators to 2 members of the athlete's household and revisit that in mid-January, and we do not charge our spectators at this point. I think students who are participating in athletics will need to remain in the online enhanced instructional model through the first semester of this school year, and again, we revisit that in the middle of January, just for the reason I just got done talking about, because those kids are at higher risk of bringing this back into our schools. That we amend our co-curricular code for the safety of our athletes and coaches to include the following, because Mr. Jelnick referenced this. One of the things is this is counting on students to self-report if they have symptoms and things like that, and it's really important, and they've all talked about in their video, and coaches talked about we will do anything. This is the key, is we need to self-report. If we find out an athlete or co-curricular participant is not forthright or forthcoming in information about COVID-19 symptoms, close contact with someone who's had positive with COVID-19 or their own COVID-19 positive test, it will be considered a major code violation with consequences to be served after any quarantine that is required due to COVID. And I think we add that to our co-curricular code. I think if you allow high school sports, we should allow middle school sports. But I would recommend that practice competition be a max of like 4 times per week, and we don't have that Wednesday competition, because again, having parents have to bring their kids in, it gets too late. We'll go past our 6 o'clock time on Wednesdays, and I know there's religious education activities happening throughout our community, and we don't want to interfere with that. I also think we need to look at allowing youth activities to start in our building starting after that holiday season, or after December 7th, with guidelines of no more than 10 athletes and 2 coaches at a time in a space, with a maximum of 2 one-hour practices per week. Because I think gym space is going to be an issue, so we need to limit that. And then with no youth activities over our holiday breaks, and only single team competitions in Lodi, that we don't have tournament. We're not allowing our high school varsity teams to bring in a group of 2 or 3 teams, why would we let our youth do that?
So what specific youth activities?
Well, I think
would
like
those be?
youth basketball, youth wrestling, those type of things we allow.
So the
to
same
start.
winter sports?
Yeah, okay. And then we also allow to start other co-curriculars, not just sports, to meet in person. So if they follow social distancing, group size, masking, so example, forensics, music groups, mock trial, and things like that, also need to have the opportunity to meet, but they have to follow the same guidelines and things we've talked about, athletics. A lot of times we talk about co-curriculars, we just talk about athletics, but these other kids are also missing out, right? Our music kids aren't getting the opportunity to, in our ensemble groups who get together typically before school at 7 a.m. Well, can we have them get together and socially distance and space out in a safe way and work with our administration to have that happen? So that would be my recommendation to the board moving forward.
And to have all those co-curriculars follow the code, but also to be online enhanced through the end of the first semester, just like any other.
Yeah, if you're competing, right? So for me, if you're going and competing with others, so like if our music group's getting together and they're just getting together with kids from Lodi, then I don't think they have to be an online enhanced. But if they're going to Lake Mills or Poinet or other communities and then coming back, and they're also having close contact, right? If you're in wrestling and basketball, there is no way you cannot have close contact, right? We talked about wrestling being a high-risk sport. I don't know how basketball is not, right? Because wrestling is 6 minutes you're on a mat together, right? And it's close contact. Basketball, if you're guarding the same person for 20, it's close contact, right? You're boxing people out, you're in each other's face, Lodi kids don't foul, but other kids may foul us, right? So, Coach Hauser and Coach Poles have taught great defense, so we don't have much fouling going on, but there's contact that is made, right? And good defense brings contact, so there's going to be contact between that. So when you go to forensics, and some of those things are going to be done online anyhow, like mock trial will be probably done online, but can we bring our kids in to work on mock trial? Same with forensics. But these other events, like, again, hockey, basketball, you are being close contact with kids from other communities. And you are a higher risk of bringing that stuff back. Again, and this is a lower risk group, right? But you're still a higher risk of bringing that back than kids who are just staying in our own community.
I have several questions when I
Yes.
have a chance.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, when you say 2 spectators per household, is that only Lodi athletes? Or are you allowing spectators from other districts to come in, like the competitors?
We would allow 2 from each competitor from each town, each team, right? So when you're bringing in a basketball team, you're bringing in, probably,
48 people.
50 people, like 20, if you have 12 kids and 13 kids on your bench, so you have 24, 25 kids or parents coming in, same with the other team. Other schools are gonna allow 4 in our conference, but, we could play schools that don't have any limit.
So saying that if you're participating in a co-curricular, that you have to stay in the online enhanced model. So if we are hybrid at that point, and you're a student that's been brought in for the enhanced learning model, and now you're in a co-curricular, do you have to not come in anymore, or are you still allowed to come in for the small group instruction?
Good question. I would say that you are not allowed to come in at this point. You'd have to make that choice.
And does that include middle school and youth, or just high school?
It'd be middle school. We'd have to discuss youth, because I don't know if we don't have the knowledge of who's on youth teams or not. Right, if youth are using our buildings versus like middle school, I know who is, high school, I know who is.
We could clearly find out which kids are there for us.
And then my last question is, so if we say yes to youth, like, do they have to follow the same protocols as what the high school and middle school are showing us?
We would make
As far
them,
as like cohorts and
yeah, so what,
transportation, I mean, a lot of the,
yeah, sorry,
Go ahead.
keep going, Barb, I'm sorry I interrupted.
no, Zane, go ahead.
Transportation, we don't do anything for youth basketball or wrestling, anything like that. It's all parents and things of that nature. And again, these are just my recommendations. The board can make any decision they want. They can decide that we want to start without bringing youth in. We just want to do middle school and high school, or we just want to do high school. But the recommendation I had made was if you have youth, you only have 10 participants and 2 coaches allowed at a time in a space. So whether that be wrestling so you're cohorting that way, right? And making sure, and again, I would hope we'd want to follow up with them and having them do screening. And we would have to work with them on how to sanitize different things as well.
And they have to know who was there, because how would you contact trace?
Right, so they're gonna have to take care of that,
log.
right, from a coach, from an organizational perspective. And again, having coached youth basketball, I know who's at practice, right? I don't have a written form, but I would probably follow ours, right? And do that with my youth basketball team if I was responsible for that. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think has been so compelling about these presentations is the level of commitment and attention to detail from all the coaches. Particularly, we mostly heard from the high school coaches, and that's, I think is really kind of just reassuring that this is taken so seriously. I guess, that maybe it's a little bit at the younger levels, that would be a discussion that we should have of like, this also takes that level of commitment, if that's what we were told, because it is a risk to, going back to school in the community.
We could ask, just like we did for our coaches and we did for our contact days, we could ask any group that's coming in to provide us a plan of how they're going to follow all these different things, how they're going to mitigate all the risk, how they're going to sanitize, how they're going to screen, all those different things. We would require masking, just because they're in our buildings. Right now it's a governor requirement, but the district has required that anyhow, regardless of what happens with the governor's mandate. So we could do that as well, and I am sure, my guess is youth basketball, boys, girls, and youth wrestling would be happy to follow that model, right? And if they're not, then again, we just don't let them use the buildings if that's what the board decides to let them do. And again, we're gonna be limited, right? So we're gonna be limited, we talked about allowing the youth in, but we're gonna be limited in space. Like, we're already limited in space, gym space, when we run youth athletics. But now if we're trying to put bigger gaps in between these groups, so your youth might only be able to come in once a week and do those things versus multiple times per week.
So we're limiting to 2, sorry, there's so many details. It's all swimming around. For each team member, 2 participants can come in and watch them play. But you mentioned that we might go to a school where they have 4 or none, no restrictions.
Right.
So can't we limit?
We can restrict ours.
Right.
Right, so there's a couple things the board could do, and this was the conversation at the Capitol Conference.
Right.
Which was an interesting conversation to have, right? Because there's not all the schools, I mean, those guidelines we came out weren't unanimous.
I get it.
But the issue for me is, the masking, for example. I was very clear. I don't want to predict what our Board of Education would do, but my guess is that if we weren't requiring masking, our Board of Education is going to say no to any type of athletic event. And same with the spectator. Like, we can share with our families. This is what's allowed, right? And the expectation is Lodi goes to an event, you're allowed 2 spectators, and we can let the other schools know, because they're going to limit it to 2 or 4, and we're the ones who are going to ticket it. So
you said 2, 4, or unlimited.
right. So the other piece you could say is, if you don't have guidelines like this, you need to follow ours, or we're not playing you. That is a possibility. So, for example, the Capitol Conference, we've come together.
Right.
I don't know what the Badger Conference, northern schools are gonna do, like a Sauk Prairie, Portage, Reedsburg, Baraboo, which are all teams that, you know, we like to play,
Yes.
and are good fits for us to play. I don't know what they're gonna do. I know, in talking to Portage, they've done a lot of the same things we're talking about. Most of the schools up there are limiting spectators, they're indoor spectators. Outside was a little different, but indoors, they were limiting spectators. Some of them were allowing, I think Portage was allowing like 20 kids to, a lottery to come to their volleyball games, just to try to limit that number. They were finding outdoor events were really hard to manage because kids would show up behind the fences.
Sure.
Right? And other schools who were trying to allow students were really struggling to get students to social distance, right? You'd spread the students out 6 feet, you'd turn around, a third student would come stand in between the two, you just spread out. So I think you, as a board, we can say, this is what we are allowed. There needs to be spectator limits, right? Now, if it's 2 or 4, you know, we're probably fine with that, but for us, it's 2 at this point until January.
2, 4, and unlimited are very different.
They are, right. So, but that's the stuff we don't know until we say, yes, we're gonna go with sports, and then we start trying to schedule these things, and we can find out from those other schools. And again, most of the schools we play are the Capital Conference, but, like as I said, I know Portage was limiting for volleyball this fall. I'm sure Sauk Prairie was limiting their spectators for athletics this fall. I would assume most schools are, and from what I've heard across the state, they're limiting the number of spectators. I don't think there's too many unlimited indoors.
Right.
Outdoors is a little bit different.
That's different,
right? But indoors right now, and even that.
We're talking indoors.
Right, we are. So I think most people will limit at some point. I would be very hesitant. I would not want to send our students to a place that had unlimited spectators inside. I think there's been some pushback even right now with the WIA having their tournament series and WIA coming in and mandating how many kids, how many spectators every person could have, because they kind of run the event if it's a tournament event.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're under, with DeForest, they built a medical advisory committee, and they will follow Dane County guidance pretty closely and district level, so as yourself. What I understand is that the AD at DeForest is not going to sign off on a contract with another school unless they follow the medical advisory committee's recommendation of DeForest. I think it might be 4 or it might be 2 spectators. But if the other school district isn't going to adhere to those rules, he's not allowing DeForest kids to go up there. Something like that.
That's what we have to do, you know?
We don't want to undermine a good program by allowing other districts to put our community members as well as the kids at risk. And so, you know, a lot of this is, we're not just talking about Lodi athletes, we're talking about the broader community. And I think this is actually a call to action to the community. You want sports. People want sports very much so. And everybody in this community can contribute to the success of athletics by being careful. If you have an athlete in your household and they're trying to participate in athletics, and people in your household get sick, you know, that's putting some of these sports programs, you know, at risk.
I have another thought process here. We hopefully will be having people involved in co-curriculars, sports, and clubs. What about the students that aren't involved in those, that don't have an SEL area to go? It'd be like what I always equated, I think, the A and B student, as a teacher, the A and B students did pretty good. The D and F students, you had to work really hard, and maybe some of them did it pretty good, but the C students always got caught in the middle. It seemed to me like my students that got C's, they didn't fit anywhere. They didn't fit, and I'm worried about that. And I know I can't worry about everything, but that's another contingency. The students that don't have a club or a sport or a team or a group for their emotional support. And I'm not even an SEL type of person, but I really think that those kids that don't have anything to go to are, I hope we can find something that we can help them with, because I think it's going to be more of a problem if we don't.
No, I agree. I mean, hopefully we can continue to work together to bring some of our transmission down of this
Yeah.
virus, right? The issue that comes back for me is, at the school level is staffing, right? You heard it a couple times today, is being able to staff a building. Right now, my high school would probably be closed and online if we were in person due to staffing being out, due to quarantines and positivity and this, it's just those, and that's not the transmission that's really happened a whole lot at school. But it's in this community, I mean, it's just such a high level. I think I've said this before, you know, COVID's kind of like glitter,
Yeah.
right? If I had glitter here, somehow tomorrow I stopped it for a soda at Quick Trip, there'd be glitter there, right? And if we're not putting our mask on and we're not taking it seriously at all times, and it's exhausting, right? And it's just exhausting. But it's one of those things that, for those kids, we need to try to get them back in school. And I think that's the next step, is how do we get kids back in school? Because that's the part I really struggle with, is providing this opportunity, but then we have families who really need their kids back in school, right? And, but it's a much bigger deal if also my whole third grade class is gone, right? And I am yanking them in and out, versus junior high basketball, which is going in and out. That's not as serious. I mean, it's health-wise, but them not being able to do that in person, it isn't such a deal where I need to have that education done on a consistent basis, right? If I'm moving in and out of a educational model versus I'm moving in and out of in-person basketball, we'll survive that a lot easier. So this is a first step, right? We've been talking about a first step somewhere. Where can we make a first step coming back? And we started with some of our lower risk curriculars at the high school level. They were fairly successful. We've had some contact days. We brought some other kids in throughout the district. This is kind of just another step in this process. It's been really hard with the way the numbers have gone in the number of cases of COVID we have in Lodi. It's here.
I have one last question. When you get contacted by whatever entity does the testing when there's a positive test, or is it only information given to you from the student or the parents?
So that's a great question. So Columbia County, you may have saw in the paper recently, Dane County has stopped, they're in crisis mode. They can't contact trace everybody. Columbia County's been there a while.
Right.
But they do contact trace, or at least get back to institutions, schools, nursing homes, things like that. So if a student is in school, we will get contacted. So if they're in an athletic event, we will get contacted. Students that are not, or just are online right now, we don't get contacted with each one of them because they're not in school. So there's no contact that they would have with other students at school. So they're not going through that. Does that make sense? We're not contact tracing them at school because they haven't even been in the building. So
Right, but, sorry, how do you, but the county doesn't know that that child's not necessarily in school, so is the parent or the child having to report that to the county of, hey, I'm coming to enhance learning in building, or I'm participating on the sports team?
yeah, my understanding is that the county is contacting every school-age child that is a positive and having that conversation. That are you in, what kind of school are you in? What kind of athletics are you in athletics? Are you in? So for example, I got an urgent call one of the first weeks of school about students who were positive, and then the county was like, oh, they weren't in school, but they had been here. They had been here for something, so, but they don't call.
Right, but that information is still being supplied to the county through the family, correct? Like, they're not just calling you and saying, we've got this positive school-age child.
Correct. Right, they have to go through the family. Right, if we're back all in online or in person, then I would think all that information would come to us, but since we're not all back in person, they're just having that conversation with the family.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Sure, I do.
Okay.
So, I'd like to accept the administration's recommendation, but when I say that, I'm not including youth activities. I think that should be discussed separately. So, I've listened to all of this, been studying it. I appreciate what people have been doing. I'm willing to accept the recommendation. There's my motion.
Wait a
I thought it was
minute.
a question.
You said you had a question. I want to make a comment yet. There's still
Yeah,
discussion.
so normally we're supposed to make a motion and then second the motion before we have a discussion. Because this is the only item on the agenda, we'll allow any discussion at any time. How about
And
that?
mine's really not a point of discussion, it's a comment.
Got it.
And the comment I would like to make is kind of playing devil's advocate
Yes.
here. And I like Vince, you know, where we put our toe in the water in the fall and now we're gonna put in half the foot. Okay, I get that, but to be consistent and to be fair, we only allowed low risk and one, was it moderate risk? And some of the low risk we didn't even allow in the fall. So had we gone with this recommendation, we would have allowed soccer, we would have allowed swimming, we would have allowed volleyball. Football may have still been questionable. But I would just like to point that out.
Hey, but again, on top of that, that's true. But
Yes.
on top of that, we've learned from the other districts who did go forward,
That is correct.
right? So the information today is different than it was then.
In the fall, they had the opportunity to go into the spring. We didn't have to make those decisions because they had the chance. Like football still has a chance to have a season in the spring. Winter doesn't. It's now or never, correct?
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and so that is different also, but, so,
I mean, I think it's a good point. You're acknowledging that, like.
in other words, we took the easy route to say, oh, we'll just kick the can down to spring.
No,
And
I
we
think
don't
we
allow
disagree.
these sports?
I think one of the discussion points we had the board had, and I as well, was we will know more, right? We talked when we had this conversation about low-risk sports, and then we talked about medium and high-risk sports. We allowed all the low-risk sports, and we considered a doubles tennis, which was considered medium. We're like, well, is it really medium?
Moderate, yeah.
Right? So we allowed that to happen. All the rest of the medium-risk sports and high-risk sports, we said no to. But we also said, one of the reasons we can make this decision at this point is we will know more in the spring. Like when we have to make this decision again for football, we will know more. We will know more because the information about COVID is changing. So for example, this this study just came out from the UW that said there was a very limited transmission. Now, the timing of the study is a little questionable. It came out from the WIA, and all these schools are making these, or we're in conjunction with WIA, and all the schools are making these decisions this week, right? And it's not connected to they shared a summary of the study. I reached out to Travis Wilson, who who wrote the article about it, and I said, hey, can you give me the full study you wrote on? He goes, all I've seen is the summary. And it hasn't been peer reviewed, but it's information, right? It's more information that way. And we've also learned more about, that there's less transmission at schools, right? Because they're wearing masks. We're doing those types of things. We're disinfecting, we're hand washing, those type of things. So we're learning more. So we know more. So we're willing to take a little more of a chance with okay, let's take this next step, I think. At least that's where I am. Am I still should we be taking this step? I don't know the great answer to that question, right? I think this is in the best interest in what I know right now. The hard part is, well, yeah, Sauk's done it, Portage has done it, Poynette didn't, Columbus didn't, and some were pretty successful. Some weren't, right? There were some teams that were in and out. There was a lot of football games canceled this fall. So it comes back to, is this the right decision, or are we just doing it because we're tired too, right? And everybody else around us is doing it, and well, if they're the old thing your mom used to say, right? You jump off a bridge when you jump off a bridge.
I'm not disagreeing with maybe the decision we're about to make, but I'm playing devil's advocate so that people can fully understand, so that people in our community can fully understand why we made the decision in the fall and why we're gonna potentially make the decision now. That's all I was trying to point out.
Thank you.
The other piece I also think that's a little different than this is kids had more opportunities to do stuff in the fall, right?
True.
There's more light, there's more time outside, there's more things you can do, right? If my son couldn't play football, he could still go to the golf course. He could still go for a hike. Those things become more and more limited, especially with your school day online. And now you don't have enough light to do some of those things. So now it's like that's another piece that weighs in there that I don't sometimes think about until I look over your head and look out the dark window, and know that, I come here in the dark and I leave here in the dark. So it's very difficult for our kids to come up. So I think we, just like everybody else, are working our way through this step by step the best that we can.
Barb?
Well, I just wanted to, two things. One, do we have to do each of these as a separate action, or are we gonna lump them all together?
We could do them as a lump or as separate, but we've already got a motion on a lump, so
I'm with the lump.
we need a second on a lump.
Right.
I'll second the lump.
We have a motion and a second, so we're lumping it.
All right.
I'm gonna make it clear, though, what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, is that okay?
That's okay. Are we at discussion?
No, so we're gonna get a clear motion first.
Okay.
Okay.
My motion is to accept the administration's recommendation on everything except youth sports.
So that would mean we're gonna allow all winter co-curricular seasons at the high school and the middle school to progress as scheduled with no competitions until the week of December 7th. All co-curricular participants who engage in personal competition with other schools be required to remain in the online enhanced instructional model through the first semester, and that we follow Capital Conference guidelines requiring face coverings at all times for participants and spectators, screening required of all participants, and we only allow 2 spectators per household per participant, with this being revisited by the administration and conference on January 16th of 2020. And that for safety of our participants, coaches, and competition, we amend our current co-curricular code of conduct to include that if a participant is not forthcoming about information about COVID-19 symptoms, close contact with someone who is positive with COVID-19, or his or her own COVID-19 positive test, it will be considered a major code violation with the consequence to be served after any quarantine is required due to COVID-19. Is that your motion?
The only thing I don't agree with there is I think we should allow the administration, there was a discussion about middle school athletics and how they, some would be going on now, like, let's say boys basketball would be going on now and girls would not. Somehow our administration's got to figure that out, our administration and our athletic director.
Great, so your motion is to let them all go forward and let them figure it out.
Yep.
That's what it says.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're saying, so that interferes, I think what you're trying to point out, Bill, is that interferes with the middle school wrestling and basketball program because they would already be in. Yeah, so if we only allow competitions for them December 7th, they only have like 2 weeks of
That is correct.
Yeah.
They'd have 2.5 weeks of competition.
Our administration and our athletic director would have to figure that out.
To allow them to compete in competition
December.
before December 7th.
Yes.
Is that what your motion is, or are you
Yes.
saying, because that's not what this says?
I know. Well, okay, so I had 2 caveats. One is to discuss youth sports separately.
That's really done.
Yeah.
And the administration can figure out how or when, which group to start competition December 7th, or I think it was November 16th.
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for discussion
It's-
about
we're
that.
discussing now,
But the
so.
reason for the December 7th was to get it after
Right.
the Thanksgiving holiday, where there's a higher risk of family gatherings, or travel and family gatherings causing transmission, it's putting the program at risk.
I listened to that, but for a student at the middle school level, do we want them to practice and only have potentially one game? They would only have 2.5 weeks, so they could have a maximum of 3 games. That's not gonna work.
Well,
Better than no season.
better than no season at all.
They probably have a maximum of 5, right? If you
Yeah, they don't play a lot
2.5 weeks, you
anyway.
usually do 2 a week in middle school.
I thought it was one game.
I have things to add when you're ready.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
guess, Sue could answer that question. Sue, typically, if we had that middle school starting December 7th, would they be able to get 5 games in?
Basketball potentially could get 5.
Wrestling would.
And then wrestling, if we're following WIA guidelines, they would get 3, because it would be 1 per week.
But they would be able to start practice with.
Right.
Yeah, so the WIA doesn't have a start date officially for middle school sports. I'm meeting with middle school athletic directors later this week. So the guess is that we would all, most of the other schools would probably start practice the first full week of November, is what they're thinking. So if that's something you wanted to do, we could try to have our coaches ready and our plans in place for middle school to start at that point. Otherwise, we can delay it a week after that, or whatever you guys determine is the best fit.
Let the administration and the athletic director dictate that part of when the schedule and what the schedule's gonna be. But I'm only saying that for middle school.
This was their recommendation.
You might get more no votes if you go down that path.
Can we separate that out?
Before we go further,
Can
Barb
we
wanted to add some stuff.
separate?
Go ahead, Barb.
Say it again, Barb.
Sorry. Well, I'm just wondering if we can maybe just do all of these separate, but I think there's different discussions for each one. But because I'm in agreement with a lot of it. I want to say, just because I feel the need to say this, I read the report from the UW-Madison about the low COVID incident. I think a major part missing from that is those sports, of 8 of them, 5 to 6 of them were outside. I mean, I think we have a very different environment that we're going into, and I just think people need to be aware of that. I have a very difficult time with the recommendation that co-curricular participants who engage in the in-person competition have to remain in the online enhanced instruction model, because it's actually not, you're saying that you don't want them to come into the school, so that's not the online enhanced model, that would be completely virtual. And that's a long, I guess I would rather we figure out some way that if there are kids that are already coming in for the online enhanced model, for the enhanced part of it, that are going to be participating in co-curriculars, that there's some way that they can still come in and get some of that direct instruction if they need that. Because going till the end of January, you're looking at 3 months of them not having that in-person instruction that they might really need. And then the one thing I also think that's missing from here that we talked about was, are we going to allow our teams or our participants to go to other districts that have less stringent guidelines than we do? So I'm just wondering if it's better to not lump these together and do them separately, but that's my thought.
Okay, I'll take another shot at this.
Well, we have to finish this motion, and then we can make new motions on individuals if you would like.
Fine.
If we would like.
Fine.
He can withdraw that motion if
Right.
the person who seconded agrees to that.
I agree.
Do you wanna vote on, somewhere in there, made the second?
I made a second.
Shelley did.
I
If
just
you
said-
withdraw,
Do you
shall
wanna
we?
vote on the motion this way? Yes or no?
Say it again?
Do you want to vote on the motion as it is?
Instead of or withdraw, right?
Yes.
Correct.
I think I will withdraw.
Okay. So my motion is that we allow co-curricular.
Well, hang on. You either have to say you want to go forward or you want to withdraw.
Okay, I want to withdraw, and I'll
Okay.
start over.
All right.
We'll
Well,
get
let's-
this
But,
today, I hope.
But wait, before you say that, I'm okay with splitting them up, but I think there is a definite order in which they go into, because I'm very much in favor of this package. I am not in favor of necessarily individual motions, if that makes sense.
So the order is key if you want to get through this in a.
Today?
Today, there you go, sure.
So I would just not do the first one first. That should be the last one. We can vote on all the other things based on if we started a season, and then we can
Pick
vote.
up an easier one.
Let's do the easy one.
There you go.
Co-curricular participants who engage in in-person competition with other schools are required to remain in online enhanced instructional model through the first semester.
Motion by Bill,
I'll second.
second by Stephen. Now we have a discussion about this
Right.
one
Do we
only.
need to amend the enhanced?
Okay, so that's my question, is it truly online enhanced instructional model that they still have the opportunity to come into the building for instruction if they need it? Or that they have to be completely virtual? Because
When,
my impression is that we want them to stay completely virtual.
when we originally started virtual schooling, we gave the administration the leeway to make the distinction. And I would be happy to allow them to continue to make the distinction.
And my second would agree with that. That this
Does that make
states they
sense?
still, that doesn't
no,
change
I'm
their.
not sure what you're saying.
So
Well,
then,
I'm not answering my question.
What I'm saying
Because
is,
when it,
we,
well, maybe my question is permits, because what I'm hearing, what I thought I heard Vince say was, if kids are participating in co-curriculars, they have to stay virtual. But the online enhanced allows kids to come into the building,
Certain kids.
so.
So if a
Right.
student had an IEP or was an English language learner and was already coming into the buildings, started the sports, would they have to stop coming into the buildings?
I don't think they should have to stop.
Again, I think that's gonna be up to the board, right? If you wanna follow the online enhanced model, Barb's right? The online enhanced model is some kids get to come in, but the majority are still online. And if you wanna continue to follow the online enhanced model, that's what we would do. What I was talking about was that all kids would be virtual.
I don't think we.
So I think you can go either way. I can live, I'll be honest with you, I can live with that either way, because it's, we're not talking about a large group of kids. But again, it raises the risk a little bit, but not a ton, because now we're talking about a lot of kids. So if we stay online enhanced,
Even if the district goes to blended? 'Cause that's
Right.
really the
Right.
intention behind this statement,
Right.
right?
yes, yes.
So that they're not, so that the vast majority of them are not physically present in the school. And we're just talking through the end of the first semester, or are we talking through the entire sports season?
that's the way it is.
first semester.
First semester, which is the middle of January.
Middle of January, so that's not even that far away.
No, it's not.
I mean, I think the way I read this was that they would stay in our current mode of learning, whatever mode of learning they're in now. If they start playing athletics, they will stay in that mode. If we move to blended during the course of the athletic season, they would stay on their current mode, not move with the rest of the school district. That's the way I read it, and that's what my second is for.
Right, that's how I read it too, but that was not how Vince described
Right.
it, that's why I just wanted to make sure. So the way it's presented is the kids that are already coming into the building, if we go hybrid and they're participating in co-curriculars, those kiddos still get to come in.
Yes, that is what it says on here.
Okay. Okay, I just wanna make sure we're all in agreement, cause
Yep.
that's not how it was discussed
No,
earlier.
You're right.
and that was a very
Good
great way to
catch.
clarify
Good
that,
catch.
Barb, because you're right.
Any further discussion on this particular motion? Roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes,
And Adam says yes. 7-0. That one's passed.
The next easy one on the list is I'm gonna make the motion that we follow the Capitol Conference guideline requiring face coverings at all time for participants and spectators, screening required of all participants, but only allow 2 spectators per household per participant, with being revisited by the administration and the conference on January 16th, 2021.
Change the date.
Before we get a second on that,
I didn't
hold on.
stumble through that one.
Hold off before you get a second, because the earlier discussion we had was, would we allow our teams to play against other teams that didn't have these restrictions? Right, so.
We are going to have to allow our athletic director to make that distinction.
Wow, that's a lot of pain on her. The way I read this, and I just checked on this, is that we follow the capital conference guidelines, blah, blah, at all times.
At all times.
To
So
me,
is
that
two.
means that when we're playing away, we require our team to do this, and I think we require the team we were playing to do it.
Right. The only piece that would be a little different than what we have here is that the capital conference allows 4 spectators.
Right.
We allow
So-
2,
Be
but
okay
still
with
there would be
4
that
without
limit,
unlimited.
right? So that, the capital conference would be the broader limit that we would allow.
The winner, yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
I think so that's the motion, right? 2 or 4, no more than that.
Absolutely, that, I can live with that.
All right. And then,
Second,
second by Julie.
okay, second by Julie.
She was like, is there a second?
Sounded like a second from here.
Sounded like a second.
She said the word second.
Any further discussion on this one? Reverse order, Barb,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Adam says yes, passed 7-0.
Okay, the next one, the motion that for the safety of our participants, coaches, and competition, we amend our current co-curricular code of conduct to include that if a participant is not forthcoming about the information about COVID-19 symptoms, close contact with someone who was positive with COVID-19, or his or her own COVID positive test, it'll be considered a major code violation, with the consequence to be served after any quarantine is required due to COVID-19.
Okay, motion by Bill. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Second by Stephen. Any further discussion?
I thought that was a good one. It puts the responsibility on the people that are wanting to play.
Right.
Yep. Did somebody second that?
Yes.
Okay.
This guy,
For, any other discussion? Bill,
yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
and Adam says yes, 7-0. Passed.
Let's go back to the motion that we allow all winter co-curricular seasons at the high school and middle school to progress as scheduled.
I think you want to change it.
I don't know how to do the next
Maybe
part.
you just do high school first, by
Let's do high school.
Yeah.
Okay. We allow winter co-curricular seasons at the high school to progress as scheduled. This is, and
Keep
then
going.
do we want the
Yeah.
with no competitions
Yes.
until the week of December 7th?
I think if you want yes votes, you do want that.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Bill, second by Shelley. Any further discussion on the high school?
I would,
Speak.
yeah, I'm trying to get it out, sorry. This is more just a comment, I think, than anything, but, so, like the rest of you all, and a lot of community, I've struggled with this a lot, particularly over the last weekend, and, have done a lot of research, have contacted my friends in the state health department, have contacted my friends in the Department of Health in Columbia-Dane County, talked to a lot of coaches, talked to a lot of players, talked to a lot of people, very similar to what we all have been doing, because I know we're all that diligent in doing this stuff. I gotta tell you that up until probably yesterday, I was really on the fence. and defense is basically doing our duty to protect our community as a whole, not just the children in our schools, not just our staff, but our community as a whole. I'm a believer in listening to the leadership that is around me, and every leader that I trust has said, if we're going to beat this thing, if we're going to even start to make it move in the right direction, that we're going to hunker down, we're going to pay the price, and we're gonna stay home. In fact, the governor even put it that plainly. Well, I need you to stay home. So this kind of goes against that for me. I'm also have family members that are personally affected by this, that have spent weeks on ventilators and thankfully are kicking it, hopefully. As I know many other people in our community are dealing with it, and even people on our board are dealing with the close proximity to this. So this is not an easy decision for any of us. This is not something that any of us are taking lightly. I sat here patiently and listened to all the comments and getting called names and all of those things, and I try to keep my emotions out of it. And so when we say we're trying to keep emotions out of the decision, what I think it really means for us is we're trying to keep our emotions out of it, that we're trying to make these decisions based on science. And while we're talking about that, let's just throw out there on the table that we in the administration are getting no guidance whatsoever from the people that should be. And part of the last weekend was spent writing letters to county board members about their lack of due diligence and maintaining budgets for the health department in our county, which is just ridiculous. So we're not getting any guidance from those folks. We're not getting any leadership from our state. We're not getting any leadership from our federal government. So we're left here. Only one of us has a doctor in their name. The rest of us do not. And I would take my pet to her, but I would probably even go to her myself. But
I think that would be
yeah. But my point is, we are the wrong people to be making these decisions, and yet here we are, we're having to make these. I think the administration, I think the coaches, I think the players have all made a compelling case. I think they've presented good due diligence on how they can participate. I also believe that, the metrics that we've chosen are very good. I think that's what we should follow, but I think it's a long time until we reach that opening point. And I think that's a problem, because we've got to get kids back in school. And I think, as Vince mentioned, I think you were the one that mentioned tonight, this is kind of a second step. Our first step was the bringing a few kids in for special education needs. Our next step is, can we open this up to a broader group? Can the community help us maintain this when we do this? That's what we need. And that's not a ducking of our relationship with the board or the administration. That's just the facts. We can make decisions in this room, but when we leave this room, we're just another community member. We're relying on parents, on students, on business owners, on our leaders to do the right things, to wear masks, to socially distance, to self-report when you have symptoms, to be honest when you fill out the surveys. When we all had to fill out a survey to come in this room tonight. You have to be honest with those things. And I guess what I'm saying all this, and I'm sorry I'm being so long-winded about it, but you can tell how passionate I am about this, is that after taking all those into consideration, I think this is the right thing to do. I think that doing this in the way that the administration has put out, and they've put a lot of time and effort in this. I know we've all said this over and over again, but this is, you folks out there in the public are only seeing, a little bit of what we see between the emails and the plans and the passion from the coaches. There's a lot of effort in this, and I really appreciate that. And it makes our job a little bit easier. But I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's moving in the right direction, and I think this is the first step for those people who are saying, well, why is it fair to do sports but not bring our kids back into school? This is a first step to that. Or really, it's the second step. We've had one step. We did pretty good with fall sports that we did and bringing kids back. This is the next step into that. And if we keep doing this, and if the numbers can at least start tending in the down direction, that's all I'm really starting to ask for. Let's have a few weeks of going down in numbers instead of up. Then maybe we can start talking about bringing kids back into a blended model or bringing our youngest kids back into school. But I think this builds our confidence as a school board. It builds the confidence of the administration. It lets people see that we can do this and manage steps. And I think we're there. So that's what I want to say about it. I like the way it sits. I like the dates that are on here. I think this is the right path to go. And as Shelley would say, I'm done. I'm out. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen, that was.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you said.
Yeah.
Because the vast populace obviously doesn't know what we've been going through with this. But I can see it on everybody's face, because when I used to be able to see your face, we're giving it our best shot. I just wish the people in the community would figure that out.
I think the people in the community know that we are doing the best that we can do with what we've got. I think they know we are a caring group of people, and we deliberate so long, and I think that also goes to show we just don't throw stuff out there and get it over and done with. That is never the goal. The goal is to do what we can with what we've got again. Sorry, wanted to reiterate. I'm done now.
Shelley out.
Silly out.
Shelley out.
I apologize. I forgot where we were.
We have a motion and a second on allowing
High school.
winter co-curricular seasons at the high school with no competitions until December 7th.
Who was the second on that? I'm sorry.
I think it was me.
I think it was Stephen, yeah.
I forgot.
It is now, anyway. Any further discussion on this one? Barb, you get to go first.
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Adam says yes. 7-0, passes for the high school.
So it'll be 3 weeks of, all right, now I
So for those of you who are online, could you mute your mics? Could you mute your mics for us?
Tracking season officially? Yes.
You need to start one, Tyler.
Michelle Pauls? Michelle Pauls, mute your microphone.
I just muted her. I just muted her.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. We're glad you're excited.
Yeah.
Glad you're excited.
We're excited
Sorry
too.
about that, I was a little excited.
That's good. I'm glad
We're
you're
good
excited.
too. We're
Okay,
happy.
so we still have to discuss the middle school. Before you make a motion, we can discuss this. It's
Okay,
the only
let's
item on the
discuss.
agenda, so.
How do we want to do this?
Well, first, I'd like to talk about looking at how many students this would affect or what the.
Yes, good idea.
So, we've got, it looks like, and then I looked back at our co-curricular Excel sheet, so it
Yep.
matches with that. So we've got potentially 30 for middle school wrestling and 35 to 38 for the basketball. So that would be a total of 68 students potentially.
But what was the deal with the girls? Is that a
The
different
girls
time?
is in a separate season.
The
so
girls
that
don't
flips
start till
into
after
the-
January.
Okay,
Yeah.